Innovate's UK KTN Innovation Exchange provides ambitious solution providers with the opportunity to collaborate with key industry stakeholders, helping these major businesses discover the most innovative solutions to solve real-world problems.
IX is a bit different to any other open innovation programme that you might see. What I love about it is if a challenge holder, as we define them, has a problem that they can't solve with their existing supply chain, we help reach parts of the supply chain that they wouldn't normally reach. I guess we have a black book that other organisations might not have at their fingertips.
First of all, it's the challenge owners, and they really like it because it allows them to get access to new ideas from different sectors of people they wouldn't normally meet. And the second party are the solution providers. And what they really struggle with is getting access, getting their foot through the door to the right people. And this takes them and introduces them to the right people with the technical skills that will assess what they're proposing.
It helps people find things they didn't know they didn't know. It's those solutions that, gosh, never even thought that would work, or I didn't know that we could sell that to those. And that's the advantage for both sides.
The main benefit of Innovation Exchange is it breaks down barriers, it breaks down silos. Innovation and commercialisation is perceived as incredibly difficult. The IX process facilitates the transition of technology through to commercialisation across sectors.
Large companies, small companies, everybody's busy, everybody is tied up. We try and reduce the amount of time that you need to put into to get what you require.
So with the Innovation Exchange, we've proven it to be successful primarily in the energy sector. However, net zero gives us a great opportunity to step into other sectors. In addition, we have potential growth areas with local authorities. We can create an Innovation Exchange for the investor network. So there are a great number of areas where this can grow.
The way we've designed the IX process makes it really easy for public sector organisations to implement, as it maps perfectly to the innovation partnership procurement routes.
The solutions that we've been able to extract through the process, we've reached out to, I think, some 40,000 businesses across the UK. We've really gained from the technologists in the KTN and the real subject matter experts that could really help us to distinguish from what might be good projects to what are excellent projects. We've really been able to get the cream of the crop through that to get to some really, really exciting, promising, highly innovative projects that I think without the KTN we wouldn't necessarily have been able to find.
Our technology began initially in the food industry, and then by the help of KTN we managed to move it into nuclear industry, but also now we are thinking of its use in other sectors.
And by joining basically such a program into the KTN, this helps a lot into bridging this gap and get into a better insights. What are the end users' challenges and what they're looking for? And it will help us, as you have seen, into interdisciplinary application, taking our knowledge, our expertise and applying it into other sectors.
Through relationships and also technical development, I don't think that we've experienced a better setup than the KTN IX program.
If I had to sum it up in one thing, it would be kind of this end-to-end support. So it wasn't that we had, a different point of contact for different parts of it and things got lost along the way. No, we were engaging with the same people from the start to finish. So there was this kind of consistency in what we were wanting to do, and there was some ownership of it from the KTN side, which we really valued.
We've got quite a big Innovate UK project now through our networks with the KTN because of getting involved in Innovation Exchange. So I highly recommend it.
Connecting people to make positive change, and that's what Innovation Exchange allows.
Well, brilliant everyone, and welcome to the launch of GCRE's Global Centre of Rail Excellence's Innovation in Railway Construction competition. For those of you who don't know me, I am Daisy Chapman-Chamberlain and I am the Rail Lead at Innovate UK KTN. If you don't know me, that's really shocking and we should talk. This is a particularly exciting project for us. It's amazing to have this level of investment in railway construction in Wales specifically. Just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We do have toilets to the left. Most of you will have found them by now, so if you go to the left, the ladies are immediately left and the gents are a little bit further on. We don't have a fire alarm planned, so if the alarm does go off, please make sure that you use the fire exits. There's one this way, there's one there, and staff will direct you to a muster point as well. So as I said, this is a particularly exciting competition for us, as it is in railway construction, and it's rare to see this level of investment in that specifically. I really enjoy the focus in particular because of the lessons it will give us across UK rail, so thinking about High Speed 2, East West and many more, as well as global examples. There's a real chance for the UK to stand out on the global stage as a leader in rail innovation for construction. So you can see the programme above you here. Once I finish, we're going to be handing over for a ministerial video introduction from Vaughan Gething, the Minister of Economy for Wales. Then we'll hear from BEIS, Transport for Wales, and GCRE, of course. We'll have a quick break and then over to competition scope from my esteemed colleague Kelvin Davis, and then we have some challenge owners from the industry before we close. We will be taking some questions from the audience at some points throughout the agenda, so feel free to put your hand up when we get to those stages. If you're joining us online, we're not taking questions online, but you can feel free to drop me an email and we will be sharing those contact details as well to pass you on to the relevant people. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over for a ministerial video introduction from Vaughan Gething, Welsh Minister for Economy.
Colleagues, it is a genuine pleasure to take part in today's launch. The Global Centre of Rail Excellence, which the Welsh Government is helping to construct in the BEIS Valley, is one of the most exciting infrastructure projects, not just in Wales, but all of Europe. With its unique facilities for the testing of new rail infrastructure, rolling stock, and industry technologies of tomorrow, this will be a site where people and ideas come together to support genuinely world-class research and development. And that will bring huge benefits, not just for the rail industry, but beyond, into the communities and the wider economy around the site. So I warmly welcome the fact that what Innovate UK are doing today through this new railway construction competition and the £7.4 million that they are making available to support new ideas that can be tested at the GCRE facility. The multiple benefits of having a site like GCRE undertaking innovation of this kind are very clear. For the environment, it will enable the testing of new technologies that can support our transition to net zero. For government, it offers the potential to manage costs more effectively and support the integrated, high quality and low carbon transport system that we need. And for the rail industry, it fills a gap that has existed for too long, for a place to test new ideas and new technologies before they are deployed in live projects. All of this can be supported through this new fund. And one of the principal reasons why we've supported this project in the Welsh Government so strongly is the impact we think it can have on Wales and our economy. It will help to create good, low-quality jobs and skills. It will open up creative opportunities for regeneration in the local community in the BEIS and Swansea valleys. And once built, the site will soon be a magnet for spin-off investments, startups, and what we expect to be a vibrant local supply chain that can support the modern and dynamic Welsh industrial base of tomorrow. Having cutting-edge, world-class research and development being undertaken in Wales, and with its impact being felt in Wales, is a critically important ambition for this Welsh Government. It is fully in line with our economic reconstruction mission and the regional economic frameworks we have published with partners. As this project has shown too, where the Welsh and UK governments can work productively together to support high-quality economic infrastructure, we can and we should build on this success into the future. I said before that Wales must win the Greens job dividend that comes with future-proofing our economy. And this project is a great example of how we can do just that. The communities that sit around the GCRE project have a rich and vivid industrial history. I'm proud that GCRE helps them and Wales to look forward to a bright industrial future too. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day.
So a brilliant introduction there, and the value of this project really can't be overstated. But to state it a little bit more, because why not, we'll hear next from Mike Noakes, Head of Rail at BEIS.
Endless stating. I will just warn Jeff Ogden that I won't be taking the full 12 minutes, so we're going to sprint ahead here. Firstly, I mean, it's not every day that you get to be on the ground floor of building a brand new railway. We do think this is a pretty momentous time. I mean, through unusual cunning and farsightedness with the Welsh Government, we have managed to get funding together to make this possible. The private sector will come in after us, and we are looking at a truly groundbreaking project. I mean, GCRE is going to be all about innovation, not just this fund, but generally in its lifetime. That's what it's about. So we thought it makes sense if we can try and bring that innovation in actually while the site and the facility is being built. If we can innovate to address the challenges of building a sort of 21st century railway that will be zero carbon, the creation of this fund should get us there. We are confident the ideas that come forward will be relevant, not just to GCRE, but across the world. You know, in this instance particularly, Britain is not an island. The challenges that will be facing us with cuttings and embankments and subsidence and whatever else, I'm confident will be all around the world, especially as climate change impacts, and you get that impact on infrastructure and geology and everything that goes on it. That looks to me like the beginnings of an export opportunity, which, as we know, we're all very, very keen on at the moment. You may wonder what the Department for Business has anything to do with this, this being the railway. Basically, me and my team, over a period of crumbs, Ivan, how long? 10 years? 12 years? have sought to provide for the supply chain as far as we can, what it needs to do its job. One thing that's been really, really apparent is that, on the one hand, you've got a high-quality supply chain that has the potential to be enormously innovative, and on the other hand, we have pretty indifferent test facilities in the UK. You shouldn't have to go to Germany or the Czech Republic to test trains. You shouldn't have to go to the Colorado Desert or take chunks of the network out of commission or use heritage railways to test bits of infrastructure. I mean, that is ridiculous. So over a period, we have been looking at finding an opportunity to provide the UK industry, and then on from that, Europe and beyond, with the kind of facility it needs to innovate at speed, break things at speed. As you might imagine, finding a largish, flat or flattenable area of land that doesn't cost a fortune in the UK is complicated. Simon will mention 700 hectares later, several times probably. The opportunity that this site gives us, with relatively amenable neighbours hopefully, and a rail connection really is significant. And as a thing's been mined for, 20-something years, no more than that, 40 odd years, there's probably not much we don't know about the geology, so what goes on underneath is probably reasonably safe. So we're optimistic we can move on from there. So I mean that really gets me back to where I started. The putting in this R&D fund, this grant fund, is the start of a process. From a BEIS point of view, we have priorities around innovation, upskilling, net zero, science, and then more broadly, the government looking at levelling up. I mean, this is putting safety boots on the ground where they're really, really needed. We're very, very aware that economic regeneration in the area is overdue. Well, this is a great starting point. In some ways, I try to view this as you might Silverstone for the automotive industry. If you put the facilities there, people will come. I don't know if you know Silverstone over the years, what used to be a virtually aquatic car park every time it rains is now a very, very expensive business park where millions, if not billions, of revenue are generated. It won't happen overnight, but you've got to make the start, and the opportunity at GCRE is there. And anybody around here can be on the ground floor. I am delighted to be involved in this. It's been a long time coming, but I'm very pleased. Thank you very much. Hand you over now.
Brilliant. Short, sweet and perfect. Thanks so much, Mike. And as promised, we are going to move straight on to Transport for Wales. I'm going to hear from Jeff Ogden next.
Thank you. Diolch. Prynhawn da baw. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. First thing, before I get into the content of the slides, I'd just like to say what a pleasure it has been to be a very small part of helping GCRE get to this point. They've got a fantastic team. It's been really great to be working with them. We have been doing some support around advising and taking some of the experience that we've built to support them, and we're also working very hard at looking at the opportunities that we could take in terms of using the facility in the future. So just to say that to remind me is a picture of a train, as I'm sure you'll all recognise. Transport for Wales isn't just a train operating company, though. That's what many of the people out in the public will see us as. But we're doing a lot more than that behind the scenes. We are developing future proposals for an integrated transport system across Wales, supporting Welsh Government, local authorities, other organisations, looking at bus, looking at active travel, walking and cycling, and trying to bring that all together. If you go to our website, you'll see some of our ambitious plans that we've been working on across Wales, and I guess those plans underpin the opportunities that we'll have for research and development around construction of future rail in Wales, which could be light rail, it could be heavy rail, it could be something in between, and all the things that go with that. So lots of opportunity. As a relatively young organisation, we've been developing our innovation strategy, and we've aligned that that strategy as best we can with our strategic objectives, funnily enough. And on this slide, and I should say, I think the slides are going to be made available afterwards, so this will all be in a pack somewhere. The main focus areas for us are customer service, improving the customer experience across that transport system, safe, compliant, efficient and effective delivery of products and services, that being very relevant to construction projects and infrastructure, decarbonisation. The Welsh Government have got huge ambitions in terms of decarbonisation of the transport system, massive modal shift targets, which we are working on with them, which means a complete rethink about the way that we help people to use the transport system, so and a decarbonised transport system. And then effective and smart use of data to inform our decisions. So we have a team in our analytical unit that does a lot of work on looking at our transport models, working out where we're best to invest money in terms of growth. So there's some of the focus areas that we've got for innovation. The context in which that innovation is delivered is really important too, and we've got 4 things there that are critical to that context. The first is Onllwyn Newydd, the Wales Transport Strategy, and if you go online you can find out more about that. There's a supporting National Transport Delivery Plan, which has been out for consultation. We've just completed consultation, and we're working through the responses on that now to get that in place. But you can see the draft of that online as well. And then we've got our corporate plan, and we've got our annual business plan. And those documents really set the context of the challenge that we've got in Wales around transport and how we're dealing with it. So for those that are looking into this to support Wales, they are important context for us, I think. As an organisation, whilst we're relatively young, we have started with a pretty good pedigree of trying to be innovative. And we've got 3 examples of that here. The first is the way we developed the franchise, and Simon was instrumental in the development of the strategy of how we went out to procure that. But for those of you that aren't aware, we went out with a competitive dialogue approach. We looked at bringing track and train together, and actually we did a process where we engaged with the market to come to us with wider solutions that perhaps would normally be expected for an innovative solution to develop in the phases of the Metro in South Wales, and particularly the core valley lines, which we now own and operate. And the rest of the network, the Wales and Borders network too. So part of that was developing track and train together, and bringing those 2 things together allowed our bidders to look at solutions in a different way. And so we've ended up with innovative solutions like tram train, extendability options across the network, discontinuous overhead electrification being part of the proposals, tri-mode rolling stock on one of the routes that we've got. So lots of new innovative approaches being brought to bear. The final one that I wanted to just raise is our innovation lab, and that's had some really good success in terms of the way we engage with the market around the challenges we've got on innovation. So some of you may have been engaged with that. If you want to have a look at more information on that, then please do have a look on our website or type in TFW Innovation Lab into a search engine and you should find us. I'm not going to go through all of this slide, but just to build on the innovation strategy, our innovation vision that we've established is to improve customer experience delivered in safely, cheaper and faster. Okay, and I think some of those themes there chime very well with the parameters or the considerations in the competition that we're hearing about today. And at the bottom of this slide, we've got some of our measures of success of how we're bringing innovation to bear across our organisation. Just a couple of examples of where we've got innovation taking place. We're looking at the moment at a 3D printing pilot around a toilet pod. The toilet pod is, whilst it will be a useful thing for us to have, it is actually a way of us testing a pilot on 3D printing and learning from that. So that's something that we're taking forward at the moment. We also did a bit of thinking a few weeks ago with, alongside Amy Consulting as one of our advisors, of potential opportunities that might be around the infrastructure at GCRE, and they're laid out there. Again, I won't go through all of those there, but you can see things like blockchain possession planning, for example. Digital twins are a key thing for us, power modelling, slope stabilisation, we heard about geotechnical challenges a few minutes ago, etc. So we can see that there are opportunities for us to use GCRE to exploit innovation. Finally, and you might look at this and think, well, is that relevant to this competition today? Perhaps not so relevant here, but it does give an example of some of the success that we have through the Innovation Lab. And this is an innovation from RoboK, which is all about artificial intelligence and looking at the use of level crossings to improve their safety. And actually the success around this that I think is worth recording here is that the team have worked very well on this together with RoboK and actually have been successful in getting 200,000 through Network Rail to look at how it can be used across the rest of Wales too. So actually, I'm not just looking at this in terms of our network, but how might it be used elsewhere for everybody's benefit. So, what next? Well, if you think that TFW and what I've talked about today has any resonance with the proposals that you might be putting into this competition, then please do get in touch with us and we'd be interested in discussing that with you to see how we might support your bid. We've got an email address there. You can use that to help us sift them. It would be useful if you could just put Innovate UK in the title and then we can look at them and come back to you. So I hope that's been of interest to you. Thank you. Diolch.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's great to see that there are already so many innovation concepts racing ahead for GCRE. And I can also say from personal experience, if you haven't yet engaged with the Innovation Lab at Transport for Wales, really, really do. There's some amazing work happening there and a fantastic team as well. So do get in touch with them. I would like to hand over now for a bit of a deep dive, to use the hated phrase, into GCRE. And I'm going to hand straight over to Simon Jones, Chief Exec of GCRE.
Afternoon, everybody. I was amused when Daisy described Mike as short, sweet and perfect, but we'll let that one go. Afternoon, everybody. My name's Simon Jones. I'm the Chief Exec of GCRE Limited, as Daisy said. We had another event in this building yesterday, which was a Meet the Buyer event, and I recognise some faces from the audience, or in the audience. So apologies to those of you that were here yesterday, but you're going to hear the same stuff again. So you might want to check your phones or whatever during this bit. Anyway, really nice to see you. It's great that you've taken the time out of your diaries to come to this event today. As others have said, this is a really, really important event for us. So if I jump through this, so I'm going to talk a bit about the context of GCRE and what it is, and then my colleague Andy will come up and talk a bit more about the kind of the technical opportunities and some of the technical bits and pieces about what we're trying to do. So a lot of you will be familiar with the context of what we're trying to achieve here, but the railway is a big thing in the UK. Pre-pandemic, 20,000 journeys, services a day, a huge number of employees across the railway, and a huge contribution to the economy of the UK. It's a big system, 21,000 miles of track, and all of that lot has to be renewed and maintained, and that is a very, very expensive business. So that one control period of £46 billion, the next control period is the funding for which is to be announced shortly, will be a similarly significant number. That's just maintaining and renewing the infrastructure. There's a whole load of new projects that are being built. Jeff's talked about the South Wales Metro, which is a huge project. Well, we're hundreds of yards away from it here, but it's not far away. We've seen Crossrail open recently. I think in the next week or so, it's the final bit of Crossrail is opening. Mike's shaking his head there. Sunday. And HS2, as we know, is ongoing with a huge price tag to that. And the thing which kind of I've always found interesting is I am not a railway person. I've been drawn into the world of the railway over the last few years. But capital expenditure, when you have one of these massive projects, the trains themselves are only a relatively small part of the total expenditure. But it's the trains that get a lot of the focus in terms of testing and innovation, and I think that's part of the story that we'll be telling today. So we think. Sorry, make these slides jump. Sorry. So we think there's a strategic gap in the UK and European railway, in fact. And that's around infrastructure testing, and Andy will talk much more eloquently than me in a minute about what that means in practice. But Europe lacks a facility to be able to do testing of trains and infrastructure together. We have not had that in Europe, and so we've had this kind of make, do, and mend situation for the last 150 years, and it's been successful, but it does come at a price, because there's nowhere to be able to pull together all of the strands in a sort of facsimile of the real world in an environment which is safe but isolated from passengers and freight and goods movements. And as a result of that, design and innovation has been slower than it would otherwise have been, particularly in that infrastructure space. Rolling stock is tested in kind of suboptimal conditions. Mike touched on that earlier on. So there are rolling stock testing facilities in the UK, as many of you will know. But there's no loop where you can test rolling stock at high speed. If you want to do that, you have to go to Europe. And the facilities in Europe are oversubscribed. So we want to create a test facility for rolling stock in the UK. But we also want to have a test facility for infrastructure, because that is just as important, and somewhere to bring rolling stock and infrastructure together. So as I say, the result of this gap in the market is that innovation is deferred, delayed, or denied. So we don't see the pace of change. I'm sure many of you will have been involved in projects where you've tried to get new innovative products on the railway and get them type approved or get them approved for use, and struggled with getting possessions of the railway to be able to make that happen. And that is, that's a really time-consuming, expensive business, and people like Network Rail are reluctant to allow that to happen because their primary business is about running a safe, reliable railway. So some other policy contexts for all of this lot. The governments in Cardiff and Whitehall have, Westminster I should say, have set out this commitment to hit net zero by 2050, and that's common across Europe. Jeff mentioned the Wales Transport Strategy, which Transport for Wales are charged with delivering, but that's got a really challenging target when it comes to the increase in number of journeys made by public transport. And in order to be able to achieve that, the railway's got to play a really significant role, and is going to need investment and innovation in order to be able to get to that point. But there's a challenge with value for money. In my previous life in government, I was always horrified by the bills that were associated with the railway compared to other industries. And it's a real challenge, particularly post-COVID, for policymakers who are deciding where to spend their money. Putting money into the railway is not a cheap business. Politicians of all stripes are not convinced they're getting value for money out of the railway at the moment. And post-COVID, when the revenues are down, that is even more stark. And I think innovation, technical innovation, but also systems innovation, people innovation, process, the way we go about doing things needs to change in order to be able to help close that value for money gap. And that was something that was recognised by Keith Williams in his review of the railway. And I guess that's part of what the ask of GB Rail is. But actually, GB Rail, there's kind of, at the moment, it's kind of all things to all men. And we're setting ourselves up for a fall, I think, if we all think that GB Rail is going to be the answer to every prayer. On to more prosaic matters. Mike mentioned the challenges of finding a site to do this, and I guess the reason there hasn't been one of these in the UK for the last 150 years is because it's really difficult to find somewhere to do this sort of thing. Mike mentioned some of the parameters that you need. You need a massive site, 700 hectares, with a railway connection. You need somewhere which you can make flat, even if it's not flat today. Somewhere where the neighbours will be accommodating. Somewhere where you can get planning consent to build a 24-hour industrial process next door. So when I say we, when I was in Welsh Government, we undertook a major exercise to try to find a site for this. This was the only site that we could find in Wales for this. So this is a former open-cast coal mining site at the top of the Dulais Valley. You can get a bit of a sense of it from that picture. There's another slide coming up which will show the location of it a little bit better. But it's the only site that we could find that kind of met all of the criteria. And the local community have been very, very accommodating. We have to be a really good neighbour to them, so we can't take anything for granted. But they have been a really good really accommodating to what we're trying to achieve. So what we're going to build, Andy will get into more detail on this, I'm sure, but we're going to build an electrified 7-kilometre loop for high-speed testing of new rolling stock, and we're going to build another electrified loop, this time 4 kilometres, for testing of infrastructure. The infrastructure loop will accommodate a train which will just run round repeatedly, putting down 5 million gross tonnes every 10 weeks, and we'll do that 4 times a year. So it will put down 20 million tonnes of load every year on that track, and we'll guarantee that load to our customers. So people who want to be able to prove resilience to high tonnage loads will be, and high axle counts will be able to come there to have their products approved and tested and approved for use, not just in the UK, but more globally than that. So the core services that we're going to offer will be rolling stock testing. So that will be the type of testing that's carried out by manufacturers, by rolling stock leasing companies, by train operating companies. Infrastructure testing, so proving that new products work, and storage and maintenance, which is kind of low tech, but it's something that we need to bring to market soon to be able to start generating revenue. And of course, when you start linking some of those things together, you create all sorts of interesting opportunities for integration between track and train, and between train and signalling systems and electrification systems and all the rest of it. So we're creating a site where technologies can be tested, demonstrated, certified, but all of that lot done in a safe offline environment. So safety is clearly a critically important thing for us, but we do not have the overhead of having to reopen the line the next morning for passengers or freight services. So if people want to undertake a test or carry out an activity which would be really difficult on a public network, we've got a facility which looks like a public network but isn't. Buried at the third bullet point there is a really, really important thing for us. We want this to be the UK's first net zero railway. So the energy that we'll consume for traction will be sourced from local renewables. So we will have a solar farm on site. We're in negotiation with a couple of local partners to bring in private wires from adjacent wind farms. We intend to generate green hydrogen on site. There'll be battery storage on site. So all of that energy piece will be part of a procurement that will be kicking off later this month as part of a wider fundraise exercise for GCRE. This thing will be open access, so we won't favour any one manufacturer or supplier. It will be the terms and conditions that were offered to our customers will be the same, irrespective of who you are, of the size of the organisation. Our planning consent allows us to be able to operate 24 hours a day, which is different from the existing test facilities, the limited existing test facilities in the UK, and there is nothing else that's being promoted that's anything like this in the UK. There have been attempts to do this, as Mike indicated earlier, but that combination of size, of rail accessibility, of being able to achieve planning consent is really difficult, a really difficult blend. So where are we? We are in southwest Wales. We're about 30 minutes drive from Swansea, about 20 minutes drive from Neath. We're on the boundary of the Brecon Beacons National Park. So one corner of our site is about 100 metres from the boundary of the national park. So we are in a place of extraordinary beauty, extraordinary industrial heritage. The whole, all of the communities around the site are there as a result of coal extraction or of iron working in the past. So it's a post-industrial community, and part of the attraction that Vaughan Gethin was talking about in his clip then of this project being taken forward, of being funded by government, is to be able to give a new lease of life to a community that's been left behind by post-industrialisation. But it's 20 minutes from Neath Station, so it's not inaccessible. There's a train every hour to London. There's a train every hour to Manchester from Neath. So, in terms of innovation, what are we up to? We've got a partnership with Ukraine. I've spotted a few faces from the Ukraine network in the room already. Our friends in Birmingham University are putting a bid to create a Ukraine 2 facility at our site. So there'll be a permanent base of researchers at site. We're clearly working very closely with our friends in Innovate UK on this project. We are very, and Andy will talk more about this, I'm sure. We're committed to developing a digital twin for this facility. Frankly, we would be derelict in our duties if, in building a brand new railway, we didn't create a digital twin from the ground up, so that we could offer to our clients full visibility of what the facility has to offer in a digital world as well as a real world. We want to encourage suppliers to develop and then test products on site, but it's more than that. It isn't just about products; it's about systems, it's about processes, it's about people. We are aiming to help organisations with the upper ends of the technology readiness levels. So that isn't just about, does my product work? That's about, how can my product be embedded in a system and in a process? What's the operating and maintenance regime for this product? How can I train my workforce and my customers to be able to use it? How can the wider group of stakeholders familiarise themselves with the upsides and the downsides of this product or this new approach? And it's about approaches as well. So we see ourselves eventually as a place where people can come and prove a particular approach to doing something. So if there's a new construction technique that needs to be demonstrated to a client, Jeff's toilets, for example, as a target market for us. So the whole thing is about providing a facility where things can be done in a place where it's kind of offline, but actually the whole industry will be able to flow through and look at things. So it's also about demonstration. So we're very keen to work with people to have products embedded in the construction of this place, because then they form a permanent demonstration of that product's capabilities, products which perhaps haven't yet achieved type approval for use more generally. So we've got to do better in terms of finding a language which describes what we're doing, because I think I think we're selling ourselves short by describing GCRE as a test facility, because I think we are way more than that. And as the slides say, this is about whole life endurance as well, and then providing space for startups and others to be able to develop their businesses if that's what they want to do. I think I've covered quite a lot of this already. But I think we are plugging a significant gap in UK rail infrastructure. We're supporting governments, and it is interesting that both governments are so supportive of this project. It's not just interesting, it's great news for us. We think that we can make a major contribution to the UK's quest for net zero. Getting products to the higher technology readiness levels is as I say, a significant thing for us. And this idea of creating something which will allow other businesses to be able to coalesce around us is part of the sort of driving force that ministers have identified. So we've been kind of christened a magnet project, and I can see James at the back of the room there from Industry Wales. We've talked plenty in the past about other magnet projects in Wales, and we're kind of proud to carry that mantle. So we are a thing which we hope other businesses will coalesce around. We want to develop facilities on site that will allow other businesses to be able to kind of establish a permanent presence there in the long term. So to that end, we've developed a master plan for the site. We want GCRE to be a place where people and ideas come together. So we've had a fantastic team of architects working up a master plan for the site, and we can provide more information about that in future if people are really interested. And they've come up with some great names. So we've identified a part of the site which they've called Base Camp. So the Base Camp is the kind of the front door of the site. It will be the public area of the site. So we'll have exhibition space, visitor centre. It will be where our friends from the universities have their laboratories and workshops. And we also have a hotel. It's really important to us to create a facility on site because we recognise that our customers are going to want to be there for prolonged periods to be able to either demonstrate their wares to their clients or to be able to carry out testing. We've identified a part of the site that we've called the Cwm campus, which will be ultimately where we build a technology park. That's not part of the initial phase of the work, but that is something that we will build out over time. And another area of the site that we've identified as the washery campus, which will be where a kind of secure area, orange jackets and hard hat type area where engineering activities take place. So it'll be like a depot. It will be a depot to all intents and purposes with storage sidings. The obligatory artist's impression to just give you a sense of what this might look like, and I pointed out yesterday the interesting idea of people doing wild water swimming in the Dulwich Valley, but let's see whether that comes true or not. So as I say, this isn't just a testing site though. There are lots of other things that we can do here. I don't know if I've mentioned, but it's a 700 hectare site. So there's lots of scope for us to do things. 700 hectares, the same size as Gibraltar. So it's a huge site with planning consent for industrial processes. So there's lots of things that we can do there. The tracks are going to take up a proportion of the site, but nothing like all of it. So we've got space to be able to do other things. So we've talked to clients about putting structures in there and testing and allowing them to just weather. We have plenty of weather on this site. We get 2 meters of rain every year on the site, so there's no shortage of weather to be able to throw at things, and it's on the top of a hill, so it gets plenty of wind as well. So we're talking to people about digital services. We'll build a fibre network across the entire site, and a 5G network. A private 5G network is part of the plan. I've mentioned the energy system and the renewables already, and hydrogen and battery is part of what we want to offer from day one. We want this site to ultimately be part of the Welsh National Forest network. So we're talking to the necessary people about planting 500,000 trees on the site, which will be a significant thing for us as well, and significantly help us towards our net zero ambition. And I've mentioned the hotel and the business park and all the rest of it. Let me move on. So a bit about the finances of the project. So just to build the railways, which is the core element of this, is 250 million quid. So it's a massive project to build the railways. And on top of that, there's the cost of the hotel and some of the other buildings. The business park isn't included in that, and neither is the sort of the renewable energy system. So it's a big project. It's a project which needs a lot of money. We've been given a lot of money by the two governments, but we need more. So we are launching later this month an equity raise because this is going to be a commercial entity. So we are going to the market. We've talked to quite a few businesses about this. So we're going to do an equity raise, which will ultimately dilute the shareholding of the company from 100% owned by Welsh Government to a minority holding by government. there's some of the numbers are on there, and there are lots of people who are interested in using this facility, a kind of soup of abbreviations. I'm guessing most of you will know what some of that lot means, but Network Rail, Transport for Wales, the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network, train operating companies, freight operating companies, Transport for London, High Speed 2, rolling stock leasing companies, manufacturers, the European Union, a whole bunch of people are really interested in making use of this facility because, as I said, there's nothing like this in Europe, and we've identified a number of people that we're talking to about them becoming anchor tenants, so people who will sign up with us now in order to be able to use the facility when it opens in 2025. I'm going to stop talking for a moment, but not permanently, because there's a video. If I can make it work. Sorry, there's no rousing music to go with this, but just imagine, hum rousing music to yourselves. But this was taken last week. So Vaughan Gethin, who you saw the video of earlier on, was up on site last week. And what this is showing is actually part of the trace for the track is already built. So you can see the scale of the site. You get a sense of the scale of the site. So this is the northwest corner of the site. You can see the setting that we've got. So in the top right-hand corner of the screen there, we just caught a glimpse of the Brecon Beacons of the Black Mountains. This shows the width. Looking down now on the trace. This trace will run for 7 kilometres around the top of this hill. And that will be the rolling stock testing loop. And there's a similar trace in Cutting, which will be the infrastructure loop, which will be adjacent to this. So I think this video is great because I think it gives a real sense of what we're going to achieve on site and how big the thing that we've got to build is going to be. We've got to move a lot of earth to make this happen over the course of the next couple of years. 3 million cubic metres of material to move around the site to be able to make this happen. We've got contracts in place to do that. The design's just about to complete, and that work will commence next month on the kind of earthworks for the site. So if I just jump on a bit, I don't know what that was. So this gives you can get. I mean, it's not the clearest slide in the world, but if I just point at the screen a bit. So the video was taken just over in this corner here. I'm conscious of people watching on the stream, so I'm trying to get close to the microphone to do that. So that corner over there is where I was pointing is where the drone footage was taken. You can see to the left of that where the infrastructure loop is in Cuttings, and then you can see some of the other features of the site. So we've got the first one of those I pointed to the left there is the depot area, the washery campus, the kind of the orange jacket and hard hat area for the sort of engineering activities to take place. And we'll have a commissioning shed, and eventually we'll have testing sheds for EMC and environmental stuff in that location. And then to the right of that is the Cwmawr campus, the business park location that we want to develop out. And you can see it in the context of the two valleys. So this is on a hill that sits between the Dulwich Valley, which is on the left of this drawing, and the Swansea Valley on the right. So down the Dulwich Valley you get to Neath, down the Swansea Valley you get to Swansea, surprisingly, and then to the right of this drawing is the Black Mountains and the Brecon Beacons. We'll share these slides so that you can have a look for yourselves if that's what you want to do. So we've just a bit more about us. So we are GCRE is a company that's currently wholly owned by the Welsh Government. So a special purpose vehicle that's been set up to develop and operate GCRE. As I said earlier on, the fundraise that we're about to launch will see us majority owned by the private sector by this time next year. We've got a board of directors chaired by a lady called Deb Williams, and we've got clearly a really good working relationship with the Welsh and UK governments, and importantly for us, with the two local authorities. Our site straddles the boundary between Neath Port Talbot in the south and Powys in the north. And we've got a growing team. We're never going to be a very big team. So we've got about a dozen or 15 people in the team, and we're probably not going to get to be hugely bigger than that. But the people we have in the team have got a great experience of the railway and wider sectors. Timeline. So it's a bit scary. We've set ourselves a pretty a challenging timeline task, but we have to do that. We have revenue opportunities in the future that we've got to be able to get hold of, but we've got to start generating money. We need to move to income generation, and we need to move to that as quickly as we can. So we bought the land last month, or the month before last, so 700 hectares in case I didn't mention it. So that all became ours last month. Prior to that, we'd obtained planning permission and created the company and all these other great things. Earthworks begin next month on site, and then we are building some storage sidings, warm storage sidings, which we want operational by the summer of next year. And we'll be laying tracks in 2024 and open for business in the middle of 2025. That's our ambition. That's what we're aiming towards. That's the environment that we're going to create that will form the backdrop for this innovation competition. So I suppose the offer here is through this competition for those of you that bid into it to be able to embed your product, your idea, your service, whatever it is, in the construction of this facility, and for it to form part of the foundations of GCRE for the long term. You'll be glad to know that I'm nearly at the end. I like this one because this is one our architects called the tea towel slide. So we'll be looking to sell this in the shop up on site. But what it essentially just shows the relationship of the facility to the local communities and to the local geography, and just gives you a sense of what we might be able to achieve. So it's a big engineering facility, but actually it's got to live with the local community, and the local community have got to live with it. So we will have a network of rights of way through the middle of the site, and it's important to us that people are actually able to walk through this facility. We're not going to have a monster chain link fence with guard dogs stopping people from getting into it. Clearly there are issues around safety and security, and people getting anywhere near trains going 100+ miles an hour, and overhead electrification. We've got to safeguard all that lot. But actually, the public have paid 80 million quid towards this, so it's right that people should be able to see what's going on there. We'll have a network of paths around the outside of it. So we've got a plan to build a 12-kilometre cycle track around the outside of the site. And pick up some of the local features. So as well as being an engineering facility, this is a facility for regeneration of that part of the world. Right, last one from me. So it's well underway. This isn't a sort of pipe dream that we're talking about. Wouldn't it be nice if this is happening? We've got just two things to do. Just two things that me and the team have to deal with. We've got to raise the money and we've got to build this thing. But we've got a lot of support to be able to do that, so we're in a really good position. And we are constantly identifying new commercial opportunities for us. So it's just every day's conversation. The conversations that we have every day just reinforce to us the need for this thing to be built. We've got the land, 700 hectares, and we're getting on to build it. We want to be in revenue generation next year, so that's part of what the storage sidings thing is all about. But fully open, with the tracks open for business in 2025. It will be unique to Europe. There's nothing like this, and I'm sure Andy will pick up on this as well. There's lots of opportunities for jobs and economic development at the site, which is why the two governments are putting their money in. And I suppose, just to reinforce, the strategic purpose here isn't to build a facility that is like a kind of grown-up model railway. This is about lowering the cost of the railway and allowing us to achieve net zero more quickly. It's got a very serious purpose to it, and it's a purpose that I think we can achieve. So that's it. I'll hand over to Andy.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm sort of going to start by sharing with you just this diagram, just to put it in perspective again for you, to go through the fact that there's a little 700 hectares of land here that I think it's been mentioned one or two times. But and to this afternoon, it's really good, because today I don't have to be a frustrated engineer. I was a very frustrated engineer yesterday, but today I'm not, because actually I'm an innovative engineer, an innovator, and I'm among friends. You know, you're all innovators. That's the reason why you're here, and actually, so that we can have a sort of private little conversation now about the details of the site, how actually we're going to build it, and how we're trying to position it in a way that enables innovation and enables that process to baseline it against a sort of defined existing railway, you know, a typical sort of mainline railway in the UK, so we can baseline it, because that's important for certification and being able to move to that next stage of applying the innovation, that new idea, to the railway itself, and get over that dreadful valley of death into application. So I make no apologies. Some of these slides sort of repeat themselves slightly, but there's so much detail in them, technical detail, that obviously you will have the slides, but it's sort of repetitive, because otherwise it's quite easy for it to go in one ear and out the other, because there's just so many technical things to mention. So we've talked about 3 core services on this process: the rolling stock test facility, the infrastructure test facility, and frankly, it's an electrified railway, 25 kV, it's fully data-centric. There's a whole data centre on there, there's a whole communication system around it, a whole digital twin to support the operation and the management of science on the site. So we can monitor remotely, we can enable us, because we're talking about testing stuff that is not certified yet. So every day we've got to be sure that we're doing the right thing, but actually the digital twin enables us to do that. Actually, it's probably clear from some of those slides, actually it's not quite flat. As a railway engineer, I have to say it's nowhere near flat, and it will nowhere be flat by the time we've finished with it. The incline up from the sidings to the loops themselves starts at about 1 in 50 and actually gets to about 1 in 37, which is about the same as the Lickey incline. So actually quite a few rolling stock engineering companies are quite interested in that ability to actually test in that environment. I would remind you, this is a rather beautiful part of Wales. The environment is actually kind of important here. You know, it's 250 metres up. It's over 2 metres of rain. It's kind of windy, and actually there is sunshine during the summer, but that's in preparation for more rain to come, I'm told. You know, this is the way it works. But actually that's good, because I'm sure many of you have heard the story, well, I like your product, but actually, can you prove it's going to be still working at 3 o'clock in the morning on a January morning on the top of Shat Fell or something like that? Well, I can assure you, standing on the top of this is pretty equivalent to standing on the top of Shat Fell, and actually being able to demonstrate that to you know, the various operating railway companies will be really, really important. So that sense of creating the environment for the thing is very important to us. I say, going back to your science at school, the idea of science lessons is we learned that we had control, and we had control of certain parts of the science, and we varied things within that process. And if we varied too much, we had chaos, we didn't know what was going on. So the infrastructure loop is about keeping the train constant, but varying the infrastructure. So we're going to run this constant train. You may have seen we've actually bought 3 360 trains, rolling stock trains, which we're going to overload slightly to 10% over, and we're going to run a freight train also overloaded, because the point is we've got to punish the infrastructure. If we're not, the infrastructure bit doesn't get done. We don't get any load on it. Well, actually, it'll last forever. It's actually one of those things. I say that because I do know of a railway that disappeared due to tropical environment, literally disappeared in Guyana a little while ago. But normally railways, if you don't use them, they're still going to be there. So the reality is you've got to load it. You've got to put a lot of load on the track. So this plan to run the train 16 hours a day, 10 weeks, and then have a downtime of 2 weeks so we can take stuff out, put stuff in, run again for 10 weeks, put on, say, 4 to 5 million gross tonnes. Actually, with this overload process, the equivalent tonnage is going to be quite a bit higher because we're trying to punish it. We're trying to get to the end of life. We're trying to understand the degradation process because that's about certification. It's about the high level of TRL testing. It's about understanding how the whole life of that product works. So we talk about our digital twin journey from BIM to twin as a sort of cradle to grave process that actually is a science in itself, and actually that's an opportunity in this process too. We're starting to actually say, on one side we're building it to look like and largely replicate a main line, but also space to put in the things that a main line struggles to test. So composite bridges, composite overline systems, different forms of sleepers and ballasts, different types of rail metallurgy. That whole process is open for discussion. And whether it's the monitoring systems that support that, the actual, I don't know, different metallurgy of a rail, to a different sleeper, to a different type of signalling system, bring it on. So the outer loop, the infrastructure loop is actually quite tight. The idea is to get lots of loops around it, lots of circuits done, because that's how you load it up. So quite tight curves around the site in this inner loop. So 750 metres going down to 200 metres. So getting to the sort of tighter ends of the mainline network. Say the purpose of this will be that we'll put Class B signalling, traditional network rail signalling, so traditional axle counters, track circuits, TPWS, AWS, to try and create that sort of EMC environment, the electrical environment of the railway, 25 kV on it as well, typical sort of sections of Series 1, Series Type 2 overhead line systems. It's probably sort of a network rail grade 2 type line in terms of heavy tonnage but lower speed. So typically we expect it to be UIC 60 rail, G44 sleepers for the standard part of it. But obviously sections of that can be a new metallurgy of rail, new profile of rail. It could be new sleeper forms and so on and so forth. It could be that we're playing with parts of the signalling system. So we've got an ETCS overlay on top of this. The detectors, the BEIS, the axle counters, the various location detection processes individually can be substituted in the control system and understand the impact, manage that process, worry about the things like the software changes necessary and everything else, being able to reverse that forward and back and make sure that's a stable product. All essential parts of getting a product through to market. And say the whole support process, the monitoring of this. We're building a 35-metre embankment and a 25-metre cutting. We're building it on a brownfield site. We're trying not to import lots of materials. We're trying to build that on what is basically an ex-colliery workings of shale and fines and a little bit of sandstone. And we've done 3 trial embankments already. But we know we want to monitor those embankments from the inside out rather than the outside in. We want to be able to know what the water levels are, the pore pressures are. We want to know, how that is sitting in the environment, this rather wonderful environment we're in. Say level crossings, worker crossings, all those things are a part of this, which again can be substituted with trial different types of systems that can be then moved forward and tested. The train testing is the other way around. So we keep the infrastructure constant and we vary the train. So this is the traditional thing that is mainly done in the world. And say the infrastructure loop being unique in Europe, there's only one in America that we know of that's still operating. People have done little bits of this, but never properly. And again, this is a 110 mile per hour sort of. We're looking at 125 miles per hour as a possible extension, but it's a TSI 200 kph Network Rail Cat 1A railway, and largely compliant to that because it's a standard infrastructure, although the opportunity to add trial in that is also there, and you know, we should encourage that. There'll be a full station environment in there. There'll be another station environment down in the reception area as well. We will have overlays in here of actual virtual stopping points because trains like to have to stop and start, so you have to get all that sort of process, but all the track-to-train stuff that goes on, and the handshaking between that train and the station, the building of toilets on the facility, you know, doesn't matter. It's all part of the great panoply of this process. The outer loop obviously has got wider curves, 7 kilometres. Much wider curvature. We're looking at whether we have to do some things to the geometry here to allow us to run faster. But essentially, it's about speed. And say typically, it's again full level 2 system, an EN you know, TSI compliant energy TSI process, track. Again, large parts of it compliant, but it could be substituted with a section of HS2 technology. It could be substituted with any other form of new solution that we want to put in here. The full 5G journey, FRMCS journey, should be in this as well, and it's all part of opportunities for yourselves. I'm going through them all. I know everybody's got their own little ideas, grand ideas, I should say. And the bigger the better, honestly. Why don't we do that? The reality is we could run both loops together, so we could run a figure of 8. That actually gives you the opportunity to run in and out of, so you go level 0 to level 2 in ETCS, back to level 0, you know, and you're doing it dynamically, you're doing it on the move, and actually covering a lot of the system integration type issues that have bedeviled railways. We won't mention Crossrail, but classically those are the problems. It worked fine in the lab, but when you put it into the real railway and you've got the timing issues, the location issues all running together, somehow it takes a little bit more time to do. Well, let's do that here so we can learn fast, we can fail faster as well, but nobody got hurt, nobody, you know, and we've actually broken some of those paradigms. So it's really important we do that. So the net zero bit, we need, on a nice day, 30 megawatts to run this site. If we're running both loops together, etc., etc. There are ways we'll manage that, but clearly 25 kV for the traction. We're looking at an option for putting DC onto the system as well. That depends on who wants to use it, etc., etc., but why not? 33 kV for all the auxiliary loads around the place, the electrolysis for hydrogen. The trick is we've got to connect that directly to the wind farms, to the solar, etc. So our energy system is just a giant bit of Lego, and we've got lots of red bricks and green bricks, etc. But there's a naughty little yellow one over here that we need developed to go into the system to enable it all to be directly connected together. Wouldn't that be great if we could actually drive that off the wind farms rather than off the grid? The reality is there's a huge opportunity for railways in here. We've talked about regen for many, many years. We do it in places, but there are limitations on why we can do it, where we can do it. Well, why do we give the money, the energy back at all? Actually storing it ourselves, you actually get full value for it, as opposed to how much money you get back from the grid. So opportunities in that area as well. Obviously the whole process. This Lego brick system's got a SCADA need on it that nobody's ever configured before. So going to need to do that, aren't we? So a quick summary of that before I move on quickly. So vehicle testing, everything around the ETCS journey and the substitution of cheaper and better products along that way. The interchange between the existing and the new systems, that integration process, all opportunities here. There will be 3 interlockings and 2 RBCs, but the reality is we set up, for those that know INIF at north of London, that Network Rail set up as a virtual test facility. This could be substituted so we could plug and play with different interlockings at different RBCs. In the bigger game there, we can do that, and we should do it here so we can be remote operated if necessary. There's an underbridge, so we can have a proper composite bridge in here. There's level crossings. There's lots of overbridges as well, so there's loads of those. And as somebody might have mentioned about the 700 hectares of land, actually there's an awful lot of soil here. There's an awful lot of rain, there's a lot of management of drainage, a lot of management of slopes, control of slopes, control of that whole physical environment is a big opportunity and should be part of this innovation process. So the whole process of this bid is to enable you to bid in solutions that can be actually applied to the site in the build process. So it can be actually working by 2025 in here. Why not? You know, let's change the journey from a 5-year journey for innovation to a 2-year journey for innovation. That's what this site is about. And the panoply of it is kind of open. Obviously that's set by the innovation competition in terms of the areas that you can all bid into, but actually it's a pretty broad scope. And we're welcoming your application to that, and we want to encourage you to come along and play. You know, in my little environment here, where I'm the lunatic in charge of the asylum, you know, please come and join me. You know, I'm not calling you lunatics; I'm the lunatic, but you know, but please come and join us. You know, so thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much. It's fantastic to hear about all the depth and detail. I think if I had one final question, it would be, I really wish someone could tell me how many hectares the site is.
Mike knows.
Oh, I'll ask Mike. So we're going to finish off this particular section of the agenda, and we're going to have a commercial deep dive into GCRE programme with Tamara Evans.
Hello everybody and welcome to today, and thank you for coming and taking time out of everyone's busy schedule today to be part of this. So I'm Tamara Evans, I'm Head of Procurement and Contracts for GCRE, as it says, and here today not to tell you, like yesterday was Meet the Buyer event, today is more about obviously the innovation factor and how you're going to have to work with and interact with our supply chain through this process. So we've heard a lot today from both Simon and Andy about our unique testing, validation, research and innovation facility and what we're actually going to do with our 700 hectares and how amazing it's going to be. My job, which I think is probably one of the harder jobs at GCRE, one is controlling the lunatics in the asylum, but also how we're actually going to get this built. So as Simon alluded to earlier, you know, we've got 2 jobs. One of those is mine. So while they're raising money, I'm going to be busy spending that money with our supply chain. So this is kind of our thinking round our contracting strategy. So we know we've got lots of things to actually get built, and how we're actually going to do it. We've kind of grouped them into similar areas so that we can entice the market to be interested in doing this work for us, doing these projects for us. And they centre around mainly the loops and the sidings and the physical and civil work that is associated with essentially laying track. And then we've also got the the active systems, which, you know, the telecoms, the signalling, SCADA requirements, power, energy. So there's quite a lot in there as well. And whilst those are all like gathered together in one box, that doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to be done by the same person. So you can see from this that we have got quite a lot to do in quite a short period of time. And we want to make sure that while we're constructing it, not only are we constructing it in new and innovative ways, but we're also then including these innovations that can be tested and validated, verified and certified once we're in operation as well. And that's where, this is where this comes in. We want your innovation type bids to actually see what we should be putting in at this stage with our supply chain. So, I'm sure you've all, as Andy alluded to as well, got some fantastically grand ideas, and that's what we're hoping for on the type of things that we should be putting into our rail testing solutions here. And that's what we want to hear about. But we're not asking you as an individual to then implement that solution on your own. Okay? So we're going to have a supply chain that is going to be working on the main elements, but we'll also have to work collaboratively with ourselves and yourselves in order to implement those solutions. And whilst we don't know what the exact wording is going to be at this time, it will be something that is very collaborative and ensures that what we're doing is our supply chain is buying into what we're actually doing here. So they're not going to be, no, this is how we've always done it. What we're looking for is a supply chain that will work collaboratively with yourselves, with the innovative solutions, but also may have their own innovative solutions on how they're providing products, services, ways of working, in fact. And so whilst we don't, as I say, don't really know fully what that wording is going to look like on the written paper, it is something that we are very conscious that we want to make sure they're integrated, these two areas. So our contractual delivery of getting track down, getting a site operational, and the whole innovation element that we need to have here as well. So there are, the colour scheme I was going to do it in green, amber and red, but the red doesn't show up very well. But the green is the kind of stuff that's ongoing now, so there may be innovative solutions as well in services and ways of working for our programme support requirements. It could be in new types of materials, because we're going to be looking to purchase a lot of materials ourselves, and our supply chain are going to be looking at those. So it could be, I don't know, new types of sleepers or innovative walkways for our sidings. Could be anything like that. And then our main rail activity, so the sidings, the loops, and the active systems that go with that. And then, further phases, further down the line, once we've actually got an asset, we need to protect it with our fencing to a certain degree, which I think we're going to need miles of fencing of some kind. But also, what comes from that when people come, we're going to need a HQ building, we're going to need place for people to stay, we're going to need potentially depot and infrastructure type buildings, and the whole energy system. There's just a massive, massive opportunity there for innovation, because at the moment, not really sure. We've got some really good thoughts and ideas, but the strategy is still very early, so it's still very open for innovation. In fact, all of these areas are still open for innovative ideas on ways of working and products, etc. Oh, hang on, one more, so we are. nearly there, I promise you. I can see your little eyes light up there. So just, finally from me, the first net zero railway. It's something that came up yesterday. We do want to be, it's a net zero railway, and I have no doubt that target will be reached, but it is a very hard target that we have set, and the UK government and Europe have set themselves in general. But here are some ideas of what we are going to be doing and looking at on our site. So yes, we are going to be looking at energy generation, which we've talked about previously. Offsetting with trees. Might not just be trees, it could be meadows, it could be grazing land, it could be all sorts. We're looking for recycled products, we're looking for the circular economy here as well. So serviceable, surplus requirements that, I don't know, Network Rail might have somewhere. I'm sure we've all seen it when we're on the train. There's always some rail or sleepers that you see when you go past. So we are looking for those kind of products as well, but we're looking for new innovative solutions too. Something that might not have been used on the main passenger rail yet might need to be tested. It could be new composite sleepers, it could be new composite platform or walkways. Those are the kind of things that we are looking for. And there's potential maybe for a district heating system, you know, the high performance building type stuff with intelligent building. So we've got lots of thoughts and ideas as well, but that's not to say that we're not open to everything and anything that might be a possibility here. And with that, I will say thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much to all of our speakers in the first section of our agenda. When we come back in about 10 minutes' time, we're going to be hearing about the competition itself and some of the application processes. And we're also going to be hearing from some of our Rail Challenge owners. Before I let you go for your much needed comfort break, I'm going to take an audience selfie. So if you don't want to be in that, now's the time to hide your face. You've been warned. See you in 10 minutes.
I'll wait for a couple of seconds, Daisy, if that's all right. Now I've got a bit of a pause. Very good. Thanks all. Thanks, Daisy. My name is Kelvin Davies. I do work at Innovate UK, but I'm currently on secondment to GCRE to help the team delivering innovation on site. So that's, if that's any indication of how exciting I think the opportunity is, because I had one of the most interesting programs to deliver in the country through the Department for Transport, first of a kind program for many years. Well, there's an even more exciting program that I perceive at GCRE. So let me take you on the journey and talk you through some of the competition opportunities that we have here today. We've already gleaned this. The competition is being delivered by Innovate UK on behalf of our colleagues in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, but of course with very close collaboration with our good friends in GCRE. The agenda is obvious. I'm going to talk you through a bit of the background, who Innovate UK are. I'm sure most of you know, so I'll be very quick through that. I'll talk you through the scope, and then we'll take a quick Q&A session if there's any time. And I should, of course, thank everyone for being here in person. At one stage, we had a train strike to contend with today, and that magically was taken off our risk register. Hello as well to everybody who's viewing live. And of course, to those who are watching the recording on YouTube, if you skip forward about 20 minutes, that's when I'm going to say the important things, and you can pick it up from there. A quick credit to the team as well. The competitions are more complicated to deliver and arrange than you could possibly believe. Supported very ably by Daisy from Innovate UK KTN, who's the rail lead in KTN. We've also got Clara in the room. Clara is Innovate UK and will be taking the lead on First of a Kind programs in the future. And Sarah Hunt sadly can't be here today, but put together a lot of the mechanics of the competition. Quick introduction to Innovate UK. Everyone knows who we are. We've been around more than 10 years. We're one of the research councils which forms part of GCRE, based in Swindon and based, operating across the entire of the UK. And our role is to invest on behalf of UK government public funds to help industry to innovate and to become more competitive, and loosely to make more funding, to make more profits. Our summary in a slide: we've existed since 2007 and delivered a large amount back to the UK economy. And even in rail, we've funded 200 or more projects in the last 5-6 years. So we have a big impact. We get about a lot, we do lots of things, and we deliver benefits to industry and UK PLC. We've run a lot of competitions. Our CV is getting longer and longer as time goes on. We've run competitions on behalf of BEIS formerly, in collaboration with RSSB, on behalf of DFT, on behalf of Network Rail, on behalf of HS2. And what's really exciting now is to deliver the first dedicated rail competition with BEIS, and there's a subtle distinction there, which hopefully is obvious to you. The First of a Kind program we deliver is on behalf of DFT and has the focus on making the railways better. This competition is funded by BEIS, which has a focus on growing the economy and making industry more profitable. So it's a subtle but important distinction in the case of this particular competition. Competition scope. The aim is to deliver feasibility studies. We're talking about the phase 1 today, but all of those who can count to 2 will realize that after phase 1 comes phase 2. So the next phase is probably what you should have your focus on, but the gateway to that is delivering a good phase 1 feasibility project. And we anticipate the phase 2 being open next year, and whittling away from the 23 projects we plan to fund here to roughly half that number. In terms of the objectives, we work quite hard. Andy in particular and myself worked to try and work out technically what we were trying to achieve. And we sort of extracted back to first principles. What we're actually trying to achieve isn't perhaps many of the technical things we could put on the site. It is the things that we have listed here. So it is things like reduced construction costs. lower carbon footprint, reduce through-life costs, improve resilience, safety, timescales, and efficiencies of materials handling. That is really just to emphasize what the end goal of anything pretty much we do in industry is one of these things. So what we're encouraging teams to do is to bear this in mind from the outset. Forget the technology might be a stepping stone to getting to these, but we want teams to focus on these and to emphasize and to make it clear to us how what you're proposing to deliver achieves one or more of those key objectives. You know about the competition scope. You've hopefully all seen it online. If you haven't, it's on the UK funding opportunities page where it's drifting down the list of current competitions. There's about 30 live at the moment. So please have a look at that for the details. But this is essentially a cut and paste of those. In your phase one, you've got to achieve a number of objectives that Tamara highlighted. So phase one gives you the funding, if you like, to write the technical plan for your phase two activity and to begin to outline all of the complexities that may be required in terms of the relationship with your future partners. Your future partners with the main construction teams on the GCRE site. So you have the opportunity and the luxury of BEIS and Innovate UK and GCRE supporting you through that process. So as well as defining your technical objectives, you can define how you're going to operate and how you're going to work. There are some timescales, we'll come to those in a second. But a possible working model, and this isn't in the scope, this is Kelvin's vision of how you might choose to work. You might choose to develop a technology or an innovation that has really useful applicability on the GCRE site. That's great, but actually the real prize is working on the national railway network or the global railway network. So that really should be something you're thinking about. As part of your feasibility study, you need to explain how you're going to deliver your innovation to the GCRE site and the working relationships that you're going to have with the lead construction teams. Those that do successfully bid into the phase two will then be able to do what they said in the phase one. So you'll take your proposals, you will have the incredible opportunity, and I hope it's obvious how incredible that opportunity is, to embed your innovation in this state-of-the-art site in South Wales. The opportunities like this, I've never seen one in the years I've worked in the railways. They don't come along at all often. So this is one to be grasped and taken advantage of. As well as being able to showcase your technology, you can, of course, test it to, I was going to say, well, you're going to test it to bits. That's probably a more polite way of putting it. So you'll really be able to expose it to the operating conditions, you know, of the next decade, of the next 20 years in an incredibly rapid time. And you may find your innovation provides a functionality to the entire GCRE site, or it may just be an element of it. So we don't really know. It depends what you're proposing to do. If it's a perimeter technology, perimeter fence replacement, it might be the whole site. If it's an innovative piece of track work or catenary, it might just be a smaller element. To some extent, it depends what you're proposing. But either of those options, a site-wide application or something more restricted in its locality, either of those are very much good to go. The themes, you know them all. There's 9 themes: track work, OLE, earthworks, power supply, telecommunications, security, monitoring and maintenance, railway operations, and ecology and habitat selection, creation. Any applicant into this competition, one of the first questions you'll have to answer is which of those themes you're addressing. So you need to align very closely with one or more of those themes, but you can only bid into one of them. I'm not going to go through them in detail. You've seen them online. If you haven't, as I said, they're available on the Innovate UK Funding Opportunities website. There are a number of track work challenges. There are a number of OLE challenges. I see some cameras up, so I'll pause, but they are online. There's no real need to take photographs. Earthworks, power supply, telecommunications, security, monitoring and maintenance, railway operation and automated systems, and ecology and habitat creations. You'll get these slides afterwards. This is an easy aide-memoire of what the competition's about. Where did those scope themes come from? They don't get magicked out of thin air. They've been hard work to come by. It's involved a collaboration between GCRE, between BEIS, with Innovate UK. But most importantly of all, we've ratified and reviewed all of those with our colleagues in Network Rail in HS2 and HS1. So the challenges have been whittled away from almost an infinite list to a much more focused list, because these are the challenges which are relevant to the GCRE site, now, at this current stage of construction, but these challenges are also relevant to these major stakeholders in the railway industry. So the theory is, if you develop something that meets one of the challenges in our scope, which we've just outlined, then there's an immediate market for you on the GCRE site, but there's also a market for you out there in the wider railway networks in the UK. And of course beyond. We haven't reviewed these with the global railway market, we just haven't got the scope to do that. The phase 2, I know we often get questions about what's to come. Phase 1 is the stepping stone to phase 2. It provides us an opportunity to do a bit of filtering, a bit of down selection before we commit the bulk of the funding as part of the phase 2 activity. It's only about 10% of the funding is available for phase 1. So if you like, this is an extended interview. It's an extended opportunity to show what you can deliver. And only phase 1 applicants will be able to apply for phase 2. So it is much higher probability of successful funding once you've got through the phase 1 gate. And as you know, the phase 2 is the opportunity to put your technology on the site and to demonstrate it. Critically then, it's not just a case of the technology. We need teams to put the technology on site with a view to marketing it, to demonstrating it, to proving what it does. And for that reason, there must be an evaluation activity. So it's not just a case of putting the technology on a rainy Welsh hillside. How big's the site, Simon? 700 hectares. It's quite a big site. But the objective is to put it up there, to take measurements from it, to review what it is actually delivered technically to the operation of the railway up there. If you like, a cost-benefit analysis, but that needs to be a component of what you plan to do in phase 2. Portfolio approach is something we stress. We often get comments from teams, not always favourable. Why wasn't my highly scored project funded? That is often because we take a portfolio approach. By that, what we mean is we have 9 challenges. We would like to take at least one project against each of those 9 challenges. So there are 9 infrastructure themes. We might fund 2 or 3 feasibility studies against each of those themes. So typically what we would do is fund the highest scoring 3 applications or 2 applications against each of those themes. And that would then give us the capability to go forward to phase 2 to fund 1 or perhaps 2 projects against each of those 9 themes. We don't have to fund 1 against each 9 themes, but that's a sensible strategic approach to take. And that explains why sometimes projects which are highly scored don't get funded. That simply means there was a project higher up the ranking list for a particular theme that did get funded. And what we never know, which is always the exciting bit, we've said we're going to fund 12 projects in phase 2. We've said we're going to fund 23 projects in phase 1. We don't know that at all. It depends how much you all apply for. So if applications are relatively modest, then we can afford more projects. And that's really exciting if we can squeeze some extra projects in. So please don't necessarily bid against the upper limits of the funding bands. Please leave some space for other teams to bid if you don't need that amount of funding. That's particularly the case for phase 2, but also for phase 1. Additional details. Eligibility is really exciting. About 10% of our teams submit applications which are not eligible. By that I mean that the start date is wrong, the duration is wrong, the cost bands are wrong. It's incredibly frustrating for applicants. It's equally frustrating for us because it could be the best application we've got in our application list and we can't fund it because it has transgressed with something as simple as putting the wrong start date. So please do check that things like the start date, the duration, and the funding bands are correct for your organisations. And I can't emphasise that enough. We won't fund projects that aren't exploitable, that don't create a change of innovation, that do not have low technical risk. So we want things that are going to work, that are actually going to benefit the site. We really want things that will deliver a demonstration in railway construction. That's what the competition's about. Then it's exactly what it says on the tin, as it were. That's the name of the competition, so it needs to do that. We do want the demonstration phase. We do want the evaluation phase, because those are the discriminators that will help you in the future to market your products. Without the demonstration and the evaluation, you haven't got the content for that glossy brochure you need to write at the end of your project to put out to industry, to take to Innotrans, to take to Rail Live, to sell what you've got. So again, you've got the great benefit. We'll actually help you to find the time and the funding that you need to gather that marketing evidence for your products. There is an important point as well. At the end of phase 2, we don't want teams to run away with their technology because it's an integrated part of the GCRE site. Tamara says lots of procurement and commercial aspects of this relationship have yet to be worked out, but please be mindful that we'd expect really your innovation to be left on site in perpetuity, probably. And that might be seen as an unfair request, but if you turn it around, what a great opportunity for you to have your kit as part of this state-of-the-art facility in the UK. I've said we won't fund, I'm going to say it 3 times, we won't fund projects that have eligible costs which are outside the required criteria. We don't fund projects which are already being funded elsewhere. And we don't fund projects which are already being commercially delivered already to another railway organisation. The requests, you can refer to this as you create your applications. Please continue to refer to these. The funding bands are very clear. Start date, 1st of May next year. Sounds like a long way off. It'll soon be with us. And it takes us that long to down select from the applications to get the best projects. 3 months to write a feasibility report. Usually it's quite a generous amount because the focus is often the technology. This time we've got some other aspects to the feasibility report to do with the commercial relationships, which are going to make some interesting timescales. But the GCRE team will be on hand to help with that as we move forward and things become clearer. Phase 2, we expect to fund up to 12 projects, up to 570,000. Grant funding requests, so all teams have to find match funding, of course, as you'll be aware from the competition documents, and each up to 12 months duration, approximately. What does the portfolio look like? So we anticipate, if you can read that, the blue boxes are the 23 projects running simultaneously, the phase 1s. We can't think of any reason we can't start all of those in synchrony next year. And we can't think of any reason why they shouldn't finish in synchrony 3 months later. But we are aware that it may be more difficult to start the phase 2s. So that's why you see the gradated start dates. And that is simply because the aspect of the GCRE build to which your innovation applies may not be in the construction phase at the time we need it. So please be prepared for some flexibility in the start dates for any phase 2s, for those of you lucky enough to get to that stage. It's quite exciting, but it's simply a case that we don't know enough about the timescales yet. So the strategy from us is to just tell you that we don't know. We have to tell you what we do know, we also have to tell you what we don't know, and we don't know. You know about the funding. This is a CR&D competition, which is unusual for the rail innovation projects coming out of Innovate UK. The reason we're doing that is we think it is to your advantage to invest in this site and to invest in demonstrating your technology on this site. So if you're a small organisation, you will get a 70% grant, medium 60%, and large organisation 50%. And research organisations may lead and may collaborate into the programme, but the amount of the grant that can be allocated to research organisations is limited at 30% of the total grant costs. In terms of the deliverable, again, I just wanted to mention it here. We have a draft structure of the feasibility report that will be the deliverable from phase 1. We reserve the right to change that, but this is the guidelines. It's in the competition documents. This is what we think we're going to ask you to produce, and we'll let projects know if this has changed in any substantial way at the start of the projects in May. Key dates. Competition opened on the 21st of October. Seems like quite a few weeks ago. We had a bit of a struggle to get this one open. They're always fun to get final approvals. We have the briefing event here today on the 3rd of November. The submission deadline, to give you a relaxing Christmas, is the 14th of December. And please check. It's interesting. The competitions team have said it's 12 p.m. Usually it's 11 a.m. So usually it's an hour earlier. But that's what they've said in this case. So we'll be receptive to keeping that open. Please don't do it at the last minute. It's really exciting. We track this on a daily basis throughout the time a competition is open. We watch the application submissions climbing very, very slowly, one a day, half of an application being submitted, another 2 applications submitted. Then last day, particularly the last hour, suddenly the curve goes exponential and we get 20, 30, 40, 50 applications submitted. And then at 1 minute past 12, the first complaints come in. saying, I haven't managed to submit my application, please can you reopen it? And with regret, the answer is no, we can't, because all the other teams have managed to submit their applications. So procurement, I'm afraid, is not a kind and pleasant place to work when you've done all of the work of creating 99% of your application, but have not clicked the submit button, for instance. So I'll emphasize this point because there are always complaints. So, and I want to refer to what I'm saying in quotation marks. You have to submit your applications by the deadline, and there are no exceptions made to that. Unless the fault was ours, but our system operating slowly is not our fault. And then come January, you'll all have a nice relaxing Christmas, not knowing the outcome. Within Innovate UK and the GCRE team, lots of work will be happening to review your applications. So you'll all have good Christmas breaks at the expense of our assessors and ourselves. And we'll be letting the applicants know the result of the assessment process on the 23rd of January. 27th. It says 27th. Yes, beg your pardon. Usually I would have standing next to me a member of our competition team who would go through about another 195 slides on how to bid into the Innovate UK system using our process, which is called IFS, Innovation Funding System. They couldn't attend today, so instead what I plan to do is just tell you that those slides will be in your pack. I think that's right, isn't it, Daisy? We can put them in the pack, and you should refer to those in constructing your application. If you like, it's a ready reference guide for how to navigate the Innovate UK application portal. So please refer to those. And if you have any problems, we do have a customer support helpline. That team is receptive to your emails and may be able to answer many things without referring to anybody else. They're often mechanical questions about how the portal works. And if you have technical questions about the scope as well, that is a recipient for your questions and your queries. And Daisy, although Daisy works for Innovate UK KTN, she has enough flexibility to be able to provide advice on particularly high maturity applications. So Daisy, am I allowed to say this, Daisy? Are you happy to review completed applications with a view to seeing if you can see anything obviously missing? So it's not a support to write your application, but it is a support to try and prevent you making mistakes which will prevent you being eligible for the competition. And Daisy and KTN's role is also to help teams form collaborations, to form partnerships. So if you need a contact that fills a vacancy in your consortium, then Daisy and the team in KTN are often very good at being able to help with that. And that's all I had to say. We're going to take some quick Q&A. Are we, Daisy? Yeah, okay, we can try that. There may not be any. Are there any questions? Oh, thank you. This bit of the call is always exciting because I never know what.
Alan Robinson, Smartports. You use the word power, which implies electricity only, or do you mean energy, which would include hydrogen, ammonia?
Well, that's so easy for me to answer because I can just deflect that. But I think, Simon, I'll.
Well, you go on.
Yeah.
Let's see what you'd say.
I would say. Oh, well, the honest answer is you need to read the scope documents and decide for yourself if you're in scope. But as far as I know, we haven't said no hydrogen. As far as I know, we haven't said no battery. As far as I know, we haven't said anything other than the word power. So you would likely be in scope.
Yes.
Yes. But the Bible now, irrespective of what we intended to say in the scope, interestingly, the Bible is now the scope documents that we published.
Power has one connotation, energy has another.
Yes, energy. Energy is what we're aiming at.
Yeah.
Rod Anderson, University of Southampton. I think this is actually a development of the first question, which is we have to map to at least one of the themes, but are the bullet points under the themes the limit, or can we say you've asked these 3 bullets, but you should have asked this one? so long as it fits within a theme? In other words, can we develop a theme rather than being driven entirely by the bullets?
Yes, I think you can. You have to align to one of the bullets, and to an extent that's how your application is going to be assessed, because you're likely to be in the portfolio under that bullet. But if you can, it depends which bullets you mean. Do you mean the themes or the?
I mean, beneath the themes there are the little bullets.
Oh yes, no, yeah, it's more than acceptable to address more than one of those and to expand them. But you need, yes, but in order to be in scope and for the assessors to clearly be able to score you as in scope, it's really helpful if you can make it clear to them which one of those you definitely do address. But if you can expand on it, you get extra points, I would imagine, for that.
Neil Appleton, National Competence Centre. Kelvin, is it possible and allowed for government arm's length bodies to bid into this competition?
So Network Rail have bid into our competitions before. Network Rail have led applications into our competitions. So given that they've beaten that path before, unless there's a difference between this competition, which is CR&D, but that to some extent is a question that should go to our customer support line to get a definitive answer. But I think so, Neil.
Always making me run across the room, honestly.
Thank you. Toby, Town Road Drone Evolution. Particularly with around net zero, what is the assessor's attitude to risk profiles these days? Because there have been previous, I'm not going to get into bitterness and old things that have happened, but a couple of years ago it seemed to be very high, and seeing as the planet's on fire, it might be worth adjusting the expectations of risk in terms of some of these projects. Has that changed at all in the last couple of years?
I guess the key point on that is that you do have to outline the risks as part of your application and your mitigations. So it's your challenge to convince the assessors that although there are risks to your technology, that you can satisfactorily address them as a team. Is there, yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean risk of death, or I mean more about risk of, more about project success and then commercial opportunities afterwards, I guess.
Well,
is probably
that really was what I was answering. Yeah, I mean, the assessors have to be convinced that you have a commercial product at the end of what you're delivering. But if there wasn't some risk, there would be very little point in doing it at the same time. So it's just that it's a balance, isn't it? The two scope or the two eligibility requirements were that it has to be something that is likely to be usefully deployed in railway construction, which I said, and we won't fund things that are unlikely. And it needs to be low technical risk in terms of once the phase 2 is over, BEIS would like to have a high confidence that there's going to be some return on their investment. Not total confidence, but high-ish confidence. Are we good? Well, I'll just finish by sort of outlining how I feel about GCRE and the opportunity it provides. If you see this just as another funding opportunity, and there are many, that's good, but it's a slight shame in my mind, because what we're being funded to do here is to put technologies into this beautiful, shiny showcase of railway engineering, not in Germany, not in the USA, not somewhere remote and overseas, but right here on our doorstep in South Wales. I would encourage any organisation to flip from seeing this as a funding opportunity to get funding. Rather, it's an opportunity for government, remarkably, to fund you to put your innovations in this showroom. So it's a really unusual opportunity, not quite like anything I've seen before. So if you can get your mindset around the fact that perhaps in a few years you'll be charged to put your technologies into this showroom, that might not be wrong. So imagine Simon, you mentioned Silverstone. Imagine how much it would cost to have your innovation on the circuit at Silverstone or on the side of a Formula One car. Just think about it in that context, and try and get over the hurdle sometimes of just another funding opportunity, and see this as one of something quite different, possibly quite unique. This has never happened before, as far as I know, in the UK, to have something quite like this. And this opportunity to industry to put everything in one place. So I'll stop there. Thanks, Daisy.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Kelvin. And exactly as you said, I would be delighted to help anyone who needs assistance with the bidding or collaboration or any part of this process. So do get in touch as well. And that goes for those of you online too. We're now going to hear from some challenge owners in the wider rail environment about some of the challenges and opportunities and how this competition and the opportunity at GCRE links into the wider rail landscape. So we're going to start with Industry Wales and James Davis.
In any one of these sessions, there's always someone that there is not quite, you know, in the right sector or in the right conversation. There's a bit of an outlier in the room itself, and frequently I find myself it's me, or you know, and then the people are wondering what on earth he's speaking about. He's got no rail in his name at all. That's what it is. So it's an opportunity today to really come and to sort of give a wider context to perhaps what GCRE is able to do as regards the resilience of our UK nation and also the economic opportunities that we find in this area itself. So it's slightly different. Most of you are starting to write your bids already and you're online trying to check it out. So I'll take you through that very briefly as to what it is. I have to declare a conflict of interest because I live in Neath Talbot. Now, Neath Talbot is the waterfall valley that is just south of this facility. In fact, in the times when we were locked down completely and we were only allowed to walk within our county itself, I did break the rules to go to one of the most beautiful waterfalls that is just on the perimeter of this itself. Okay, so, but it's okay. My house isn't on the boundary or within the what is it, 700 hectares area itself today. Okay. So. I came back to Wales 4 or 5 years ago to try to give economic advice to Welsh Government and whoever would be prepared to listen on how we could ensure we could lift the value of jobs within our regions and locations. Okay, UK first, and of course these days I work in as regards Wales itself. I'll probably pull back a second because I know that you're already writing what. And I think you just need to start thinking about why a little bit more of this. Now, in the world of continuous improvement, we talk about 5 whys. I want to do a risk here and say, how many have heard of the technique called 5 whys? Yeah, it's the longest training course you've ever been on in your life, all right? Six Sigma and continuous improvement, lean. 5 whys is most simply put down to the fact, if you've ever had a complicated conversation with a child, okay, where they go, why? And you answer quite glibly the first time, well, what this? And they come back after a moment's pause and they say, why? And you think, oh. And you answer a second time and you come back with another more sensible, comprehensive answer, thinking it's all over. And the third time they come back and they say, why? Now you can see where we're going on this one here, because by the time you got to the 5th why, they believe that you get to the real issue as to what you should be speaking about when you talk about the project or innovation in itself. Most of those conversations obviously end with the question, which is, because I said so, and then you end it all at that point itself, you know. I'm only going to talk about 3 whys, okay, and they would be quite simply be competitiveness. And I mean in there, most of the themes you saw are already on this one here. I mean, the quality of the innovation, of the decision, etc. I mean, the cost of it and its delivery. Most of those cover the competitiveness of what it is. And the second one will be quite simply will be the carbon efficiency as to what it is what we're working towards. And the third one, which I might touch on, given that they've got now 6.5 minutes left here, would be how do you bring value back into this sector itself, by which we can distribute that into better jobs or fair recognition for the jobs that they are there. And I'll risk one graph on that, what it is today. What do we do? Well, we're a bunch of broken industrialists, if truth be told. And some of you know a guy called Mike Gillards, who know exactly what I'm speaking about. We did 30-odd years in an industry, for myself internationally, and then came back to Wales 5 years ago to look after an organisation called Industry Wales. It doesn't sell things. It doesn't consult on things. It just takes these broken people and says, you've broken or you've learned lessons all over the world on how not to do things. Do you think you can come home now and actually work out how it is that we should do things right to ensure that we can build a resilient, a sustainable nation with better jobs closer to our home within the UK, within Wales, or even perhaps within the Neath Valley. No one knows of the Dillys Valley. 90% of the people in Wales don't know of the Dillys Valley. It lies between the Neath Valley and the Swansea Valley, as in a valley itself, okay? But don't tell too many people about it. It's 4 miles away from the last huge construction programme that we've had in Wales. Simon, would that be right? The Heads of the Valley Road.
Yes, yeah, about 4 months, yeah.
And it's a major one for us, okay? It's very close to the Heads of the Valley Roads. It's the most exciting, therefore, economic regeneration project that we've got right now. It's why I describe it as the magnet, once in a generation. Now, I can see that Mike and Calvin are now talking about much more than once in a generation. It might be once in 200 years. I wouldn't go that far, etc. at the moment. Just call it once in a generation, that we do something right to ensure that we've got the resilience as a nation to do what is also right as regards public transport in the future. We do have our own forums. But also equally we work at a Wales level of membership organisations across sectorials and at UK level, and we've just recently launched Net Zero Industry Wales, which is in essence bringing industry decarbonisation to the UK. In our particular scope, it's South Wales to start. The 16th of March 2022 may not be marked in your diary, but it's marked in mine. A little coffee shop outside the Senedd, and the first meeting with the minister to say, what on earth are we going to do? The world had changed completely, and we were locking everything down. And we were getting the requests flying in, what can industry and business do to support the COVID crisis? And we discovered very quickly that we were not a resilient nation, we were not a sustainable nation. We did not make the things that we should make, okay? We did not make the stuff that makes the stuff that we could make. We couldn't produce ventilators, CPAP devices, PPE. We couldn't even produce the materials or the machines to do it at all. We could not even develop the solutions. We did an amazing job as a nation to be able to get us through there, and there are many people that we should be grateful for in that period of time. But it did point out to us the fact that we were now perhaps only a manufacturing nation, and we were no longer an industrial nation that makes or develops the stuff that we need to do. The rail industry is bang in that area. I don't know your history well enough. I could do the keynote speech on the cars if you want me to, but I'm sure you don't, okay? I don't know your history well enough. GCRE breaks that. It breaks that completely. It gives you the tools by which you can start doing something that not only retains the knowledge and the value within the industry, opens up the export opportunities that we may have, but also allows you to prove it. And also digital twinning. I love digital twins. I got very careful here, haven't I? I love digital twins. My first digital twin was 31 years ago. We just called it simulation in those days. I don't know why we have to adopt all these new names, but you can have a digital twin if you want. And the ability to take something that was empirical and assess it to a point where we knew what it would do digitally was very important to us. It took us 25 years of correlation before we could get anywhere on it. You need these centres by which you can develop the digital twins of accuracy for the future, whether it's construction of a bridge or the interface of human reaction or human movements. You need these facilities to be able to do that. It will take you a lot longer. Do not believe anyone who says it's got a digital twin at 100% correlation for a long period of time. This facility is fantastic to do that. But let me just touch on perhaps, of course, you've seen some of the stuff here. So I won't talk about competitiveness. I won't talk about carbon. It's all in the themes right now. This is some of the issues that we have. This is a graph here of the sectors as regards their ability to pay people good money. Their ability to pay people reward for the work that they do. It doesn't ask them to work harder, but it tells us the value created within the business itself that we can now use to pay people fairly and correctly. And you'll see on the right-hand side here some of the real issues we have at the UK, particularly in social health, where the index is well below 1, and therefore the ability to pay people to do the right work well is just not there. How do we recreate value back in these things to ensure that we can do the right thing in rewarding people for the work that they do? You see manufacturing up there, it's in a reasonable position. You see energy up there, it's a ridiculous position. 6.3, is it? 6.3? I don't know whether it's energy or power. I'm just going to check out my notes later on whether it was energy or power on it all, but 6.3. I didn't put real estate up there. It would have upset you for days on end if I'd have put real estate up there, okay? But you can also see transport and construction in there. Innovation must not only drive competitiveness on quality, cost and delivery, it must not only drive carbon efficiency, it must enable that we have the ability to anchor better jobs closer to home. I mean the UK. It's always UK first. Okay, and then I mean Wales. And then I'd love it to be on the heads of the valleys somewhere as what it was. I'm not so worried about that, about the final option. Use this facility to ensure that you can drive value back into your systems today, back into your businesses, so that we can create better jobs for our next generation. We call it the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act within Wales, okay, and this is fundamental to us, that we develop the skills and the jobs that will bring us fairness of reward. They are challenging times for us. I mean, I don't know where you want me to go on this. So this is a survey of businesses recently down here. It distresses me a little because every business owner is mostly worried about the first three things, and of course there have been significant issues down there. You'll see productivity down as 5th, and you'll see competitiveness down, decarbonisation down as, I don't know the numbers, 8th or something down, is it down there? Innovation is the only way that you'll drive the solutions of these things here. I could talk to you about the Boring Company, but some of you might be tunnelers, and therefore I'd be on risky ground right on it right now. You tell me that you can bore holes at 1 mile a week, I might be up for you, because I know that will be based in significant innovation, highly skilled jobs, and if we can anchor those within our country again, we'll be doing the right thing. If that's a challenge, I hope it's a challenge that brings some sense to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a really fascinating presentation. Good to have a kind of alternative look, or I suppose the wider look at what we're doing here as well, especially with the skills gap that we all know exists in rail. But now I'd like to hand over to a very familiar organisation with Network Rail and Ahmad Kamara.
Good afternoon. I'm a senior design engineer in Network Rail, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the lead designer for Network Rail's Flow Bridge, and I'll be talking through that today with the challenges faced in innovation. Okay, this is what we normally associated with Network Rail bridges. Whenever there's an issue with structures, people think, oh, I don't want another ugly Network Rail bridge. And we thought, let's bring a change about that. So during COVID and lockdown, we sat down, looked into things, and developed a design, which I'm going to be talking about. And the whole design was developed from concept to design, construction on site in 11 months, which is something that wasn't done. And the construction time for that actually took 3 weeks on site for the prototype. Okay. These are some of the key challenges that we encountered looking at this. The first bit always comes to be about securing funding for projects. That's a big challenge. When it comes to innovation, something new, people don't want to put funds there because it's not known, it's not tried and tested. So you always have that difficulties in securing funding. And sometimes the only way to get that is if you can secure R&D funding to facilitate that, we can do that. Another aspect you're looking at is, with regards to the flow bridge, we're looking at composites. And composites within UK hasn't got a design standard. There isn't a Eurocode standard for that, so we're using guidelines. It's quite difficult to develop something that everyone can follow. So everything has to be done by first-hand principle. So getting a technical approval for that, for the safety, for the design, is the key. And there's not many people on board within there who've got that technical know-how. So it poses a really strong challenge to us. Next bit I'm looking at in that program is, you're looking at procurement. That's a big challenge for everything we do. Sometimes, even within Network Rail, just getting somebody who's not part of the framework, it can be a challenge. I remember going through a project, and by the time I got through the procurement process, I'd spent the whole project's budget. And I said, I'm never going to do that again. But with this particular bridge, it paid off because we had R&D funding. We went to small to medium enterprises. And then what happened in that, we dealt with two companies, one that makes Formula One cars and one that makes boats. And they never done a bridge before, but we worked with them and were able to develop and design a bridge in a short time. So that shows the boundaries of innovation, because there's lots of areas of exchange of knowledge and ideas. They had techniques and ways of doing things different from what we're used to. So that's one benefit of innovation as well. Next thing on that bullet point is the change of behavior and culture. We have this mindset where if something's different, we're not used to it. We're reluctant to change. And that's one of the big obstacles in innovation. And what we did, we developed a framework where everybody's voice, it doesn't matter whether you're experienced or not, was willing to contribute towards that. We moved those boundaries completely. We worked as a team during lockdown. We never met each other when we designed the bridge, and the first time we saw each other was when we got on site when it was being built. So again, that shows that we used innovation from working together using technology, trying to break the boundaries that would normally be the obstacle to innovation. The next bullet there is really difficult because my colleague Andy Cross had to work so hard to secure funding for us to do that bridge, and he'll go up and down. He'll have barriers, there's obstacles, or people going, oh, you got to test this before you do that. And it was really, really challenging, and it takes the process out from the engineers focusing on what they need to do because you engage in that kind of work. So sometimes it makes it really easy to have somebody who can do that and let people focus on what they're good at. And I think that's the one thing with innovation. I think if we can separate those barriers and split them up, it makes a big difference. Resource allocation is the difficult one as well. Even when you got a few people who have the knowledge on what to do, it's really difficult to transfer that knowledge because of pressures from delivering projects. You finish one, you got to go to another one. Sometimes you need resources within the organization, people moving from one organization to another, loss of skill. It's quite challenging and difficult. And how do you maintain that? That's the question I want to ask everyone. So let's go back to composites, because that's what I'm talking about. Network Rail supported the production of that document as a guidance document for helping people to develop composite. But that on its own is not good enough because it just provides a guideline and it's quite difficult. There's quite a lot of different standards that make it really difficult. And a lot of the work with composite that most people do now is done by first principles without any guidelines and followed by testing to validate that. So it's not a sustainable way going forward. We're waiting for Eurocode. That's still being developed. We're not going to get it for another 2 or 3 years. So it's quite kind of a challenge for an industry as a whole. We've got centres that can provide guidance for doing that. Go to the specification for composite varies considerably. That's one of the biggest challenges. Unlike steel, concrete, timber, you got a particular grade, you can test it, you can have a guidance document for that. With composite, it's completely different. You can design that material for any strength, any behavior you want, but it's really difficult to specify. So depending on the orientation of the laminate, the type of laminate, the resin, the matrix, when you mix all those together, you got a wide range of properties, and that's the biggest challenge that's facing industries. So how are we going to go ahead with that? It's really, really difficult. So what we in Network Rail have developed is develop the full bridge, and we actually provide in a FRP or composite specification with what we've done. And going forward with other projects that we're delivering, we're going to pick that as part of the deliverables for people to provide the specification, which can go into a database that can be used by all. Because one of the biggest challenges in facing composite is a lot of people spend a lot of money in developing the material to produce something, but because they've spent that money, they protect it as an intellectual right. They don't want to share that knowledge because they've invested a lot of money in it, and I can't blame them. But we need to change this. We've got centres like National Composite Centre. That's a government-funded body. They should be taking the lead. We should be working with them, through them, to provide stuff like that. And actually, we're actually dealing with Neil and his team in National Composite Centre to produce a national specification as well as testing for composites as well. So These are current initiatives. We've done a couple of composite bridges across the UK, but the common goal with all of those is there's no knowledge sharing at all. They've been done in isolation, and it's been left like that. So all the lessons learned, nobody's pulled it together. Everybody that starts another bridge has to start from scratch. So we think that's not the way forward. We need to change that way of thinking by bringing innovation. Why can't we have a central hub that brings all this together so we can understand and learn from each other? That way, we can all learn and improve and promote innovation. This is just giving an example of some of the new innovative FRP structures coming to UK now. On the left there is the flow bridge, for which I was the lead designer. That, as I mentioned before, is entirely of composites. It's modular. It was constructed in Longmaston during Rail Live as a trial. We're taking it off. As the other speakers spoke earlier today, there are test centres for testing it. We didn't have that. We had to rent a shed in Nottingham, install it there, and test it out there. After testing, it took us three weeks to build it in Longmaston. The photo on the bottom right is that bridge being constructed in Cravenham, and it's just taken 2 possessions for us to get to that stage. So it's gone from 3 weeks to 2 days, and we would have finished it this weekend if it wasn't for the rail strike. I know, it's frustrating. There goes my Christmas. The photo on the right is the Future Road Bridge. That's also showing another boundary of innovation, because these are pushing the boundaries of innovation, coming up with nicer looking structures, very cost effective, quick to build, very little maintenance. Flow bridge, key fact. Cost of a typical footbridge of that span, you're looking at £1.6 million. Flow bridge is about 600k. It's got full structural health monitoring into it, built into it, so it can tell you its performance. If somebody were to set fire on it, it will send an SMS message to the asset owners that the temperature is exceedingly high. Therefore, it must be subject to a vandal attack. These are just a few boundaries of innovation that we're beginning to introduce, and I think this is just the first. On the bottom left is Tazaka's legacy footbridge. They've developed that in a very short time as well. So these are just pushing a bit of the boundaries of innovation, and I think with a centre like this, I mean, we'll be looking forward to building more stuff to test in there. It's better than going elsewhere. So just going forward, I think we need a common standard specification for composite. We've got guidelines documents. A lot of the time we're using Eurocomp and other documents, but it's all fragmented. And this is an area where we think the whole composite industry needs to work together as one, and a collaborative approach instead of everybody thinking, this is mine, this is mine. And no better than the National Composite Centre to take the lead for that, because it's a body, a governing body within UK that everybody can go through, and by them collaborating that, we can have a huge database that will enable us as a nation to prosper with design. We've demonstrated the benefits of flow bridge. We're using innovation in a very short time, and that structure's actually got a lower carbon footprint than steel. It's got whole life cost is half the value of a typical steel structure, and the carbon footprint is even lower. Yeah, so asset owners need to take a lead as well, because they need to have that active lead for innovation, because there's no point trying to come up with an idea without you having people backing it. And as a whole, I believe firmly we need a specialist team dedicated for innovation, because you can be doing a design and trying to come up with an idea for while going through procurement, you're going through management of things, so you need separate project managers. So I think we need that specialist body where people's ideas for innovation can be taken on board and developed to create funding to allow us to deliver that project. Thank you.
That was brilliant, thank you. And I couldn't agree more about the collaborative approach that we need to take, which is obviously one of the biggest strengths of the GCRE project. And I'm going to be handing over to another big name in rail, and High Speed 2 with Zoe Edmonds.
Thanks, Daisy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zoe Edmonds, and I'm the newest member of the very small but perfectly formed, like some other people in the room apparently, innovation team at HS2. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are, a little bit about what we've achieved so far, but then the primary focus is to talk about our challenges and why we're here to support the GCRE competition today. So innovation at HS2 is all about delivering value. We are driving innovation into the supply chain. We are a very small team. As I said, there's only about half a dozen of us, but we work very closely with innovation champions from across all of our joint venture Tier 1 contractors, which is an excellent kind of gearing mechanism for us to magnify and multiply up the kind of capability and the kind of benefits that we can deliver through innovations within HS2. Fundamentally, we need to deliver value. We need to engage with, everyone says this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it really is for HS2. This is the first time that we have delivered a project at this kind of scale, particularly in rail in the UK. And therefore, we need to look at everything from small-scale disruptive technologies all the way through to really big fundamental engineering questions. And I'll come back to this a little bit throughout the presentation, but the point is HS2 has a very important innovation legacy to leave. So far in the last 2 years, the team, I only joined about 4 weeks ago, so I feel a bit like I'm taking credit for other people's work here, but the team have worked incredibly hard. They have developed a portfolio of over 100 projects, and they have identified savings that if those projects were rolled out throughout the programme could save the taxpayer £2 billion. Now, I know there's always ifs, buts and maybes with innovation. If you don't take risks and you guarantee that every single thing you try and follow up will succeed, that's not really innovation. But the point here is that the £190 million of enabled savings is genuinely money that was in the baseline to deliver HS2 as is, and it now no longer needs to be spent. So that's an absolutely huge taxpayer saving from the innovations that have been delivered so far, and it proves that it's possible. And the phase 1 scaling up of that takes us to the 800 million. The programme wide is where we get to the 2 billion. So again, I'll come back to this theme of scale when I'm talking about HS2. The carbon reductions are also huge and incredibly important. I love that GCRE is aiming to be the first net zero railway in the UK. I think the kinds of innovations and the kinds of technologies that will draw into the rail sector and be able to prove out is huge for HS2 and really, really important to our carbon reduction targets of the future. Just a couple of slides here on examples of projects, again, that the team have delivered. It's everything from bat deterrence, environment. We're very, very aware of our environment, very aware of the biosphere that we are leaving behind and that we are interrupting whilst we undertake our construction. All the way through to AI-driven passenger recognition of wayfinding and design propositions for the 4 stations that will be part of the phase 1 build. Ongoing now is machine learning, geotechnical analysis, automated carbon tracking, so ways in which waste sheets can be automated when leaving site, new design optimization tools, and if you ever want to see an HS2 room excited, mention something innovative about concrete. My goodness. I went to my first UCRIC event the other day, and somebody gave an absolutely amazing presentation about the potential for geothermal, something that was started with Crossrail, faced some challenges, but the potential for us to embrace it in HS2 is enormous. That was exciting. But then someone else got up and talked about spraying concrete on tunnel walls, and they had the room. I've got it, man. Finally, another kind of string to the bow of HS2's innovation is the accelerator program. It's where we directly partner with SMEs in order to add value to the HS2 legacy. But what you're really here to hear about is the competition and how the themes that Kelvin and the team have developed relate to the HS2 of the future and the innovation challenges that we're facing right now. So fundamentally, just to give us a way in to this enormous potential, we've divided it into 4 categories. Improving productivity is huge, as I'm sure you can imagine, for HS2. Everything about HS2 is huge. If anyone ever wants to play railway top trumps, by the way, I'm totally up for it, because I think HS2 nails it. I will see your 700 hectares, and I will raise you 260 miles of track. I will see your 3 million cubic meters of earthworks, and I will raise you 130 million tons of earth that we have to move in our 64 miles of tunnels. So Kelvin's not joking when he says, if you can prove it here, it will have applications. My key point is that we have to offer the taxpayer a return on the investment. You will hear more and more about the cost challenges that HS2 needs to meet. We have a responsibility to meet those. We are very serious about how innovation is critical for us to be able to achieve those things. The economic benefit and the financial ROI is our lifeblood. We have to value that. But the importance of this kind of innovation is actually fundamentally how it can change the UK as a whole, and that involves the absolute focus on the safety and the environmental outcomes, the absolute focus on the customers who are going to be using this railway in the end, and actually how we get there is through this virtual circle of bringing together the UK, best of the UK academics, enhanced sector performance as a result, and the new business and industry that we can pull from exactly these kind of competitions. So if you take one message away from that very high-speed delivery of a high-speed 2 presentation, it's that we are very serious about the savings we can get from innovation, and at HS2 we can scale them. So we really look forward to your engagement with this competition and to potentially working with you in the future. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Another suite of examples about how relevant this project is to the wider rail world and, of course, to all the other projects that are happening alongside it as well. And finally, I would like to hand over to Scott Durno at High Speed 1 to talk a little bit more about what they're doing.
Hi everyone. Panicking on my way up here because I think I might be the only presentation that doesn't mention 700 hectares. So I'll have to try and fit it in. I'll start by introducing myself. So I'm Scott Durno from High Speed 1. I'm our data and digital lead. So look after a few different things. Asset information improvement, now that we're getting on a bit. Also our R&D portfolio, which is a bit different to some of the others. So we get our funding from our TOCs. So our main driver is to deliver long-term cost savings for them. So innovation looks like that for us. And I also look after digital transformation. So I'm writing our digital strategy at the moment, which I'll talk about a little bit. So as I'm going to be talking about our challenges, I thought I'd give a little bit of context. So relatively small, definitely not 700 hectares. Got it in. We're about 68 miles long. So just about the length of the tunnels on HS2 to measure it up. Starts at iconic St Pancras and zips its way through London, Essex, Kent to the Channel Tunnel, and then takes you to Belgium, Holland, France, possibly Germany, and more in time. So it's an exciting one. Age-wise, built over 2 phases. First phase, which is about 20 years old now. So for context of our challenges, we're getting to that age where renewals are starting to go like that. And the second phase, 15 years old, so not too far behind. And just the logos on the screen just give you an idea of all the different people that make up suppliers, stakeholders, people with interests on HS1. So despite its size, quite a lot going on. So I thought I'd start construction legacy challenges after being built. Now we're 20 and 15 years old. We're getting to pick up some of the challenges that are left over from construction. I think an important place to start, probably relevant for everyone, is climate resilience. So HS1 very lucky to have sort of like a modern railway that's been engineered to withstand climate challenge, if you like. I think some of the headline ones, it can withstand a 1 in 100 year flood, based on what people knew at the time. We're now in a place where even those tolerances are starting to be tested by the way the planet is changing. I think if we can, you know, as you see on the news and stuff, if we can limit the rise in temperatures to 1.5 degrees, and we might be able to get away with a low risk or low exposure to climate change. But if we're heading more in the direction of 4 degrees, like some of the worst case scenarios are, then we could be seeing something every couple of years on HS1 that would mean how it was designed maybe wouldn't stand up to what climate change offers today. So some of the elements of climate change that affect us, things that we perhaps couldn't have foreseen, like rainfall. We see cloudburst type rainfall that absolutely pelts our engineered slopes and things like that. And I'm hoping that by having GCRE, a facility like that, we'll be able to learn for future construction, but also how we might solve our challenges in the slightly longer term. And that obviously leads to things like inspections and maintenance and stuff that we didn't know that we perhaps would need to look at. One that always makes me smile because it's quite nice, although it's a challenge. We have rabbits burrowing on slopes, which who can, you know, it's not in any other situation not a bad thing, but for us it just means the slopes are then unstable. But it's a challenge that we need to look at. It wasn't there when HS1 began. I think perhaps monitoring is a way to solve some of this, but I think it nicely ties into the subject of data. So given that we're sort of 20 years old now, 15 years old in some parts, it's only really now that we're getting our heads around the data that we need to get the best insight into what's happening. HS1 was built at a time where a digital twin isn't a thing, so we're having to retrospectively go back and try and do that. We've got millions of files in a physical warehouse, but also in a digital warehouse that we're trying to get back through to get a bit of a historic record of intended design and intended performance. But I think if HS1 was being built today, it would be subject to requirements around BIM and information management, ISO 19650 and COBE data handover for buildings and that sort of thing. And if we had that in like a data file or a model, we'd be able to stack that up against the analytics that we have today to see where our interventions are best placed or our decisions are best made. I think GCRE will be massive for that because we're retrospectively doing it. Anything that comes after GCRE won't have to worry, hopefully. So we're fixing it, but for the future, all good. I think perhaps the last one in construction legacy is that HS1 was only ever intended to be a international only railway, so only going to the European continent or mainland Europe. Now it runs domestic services as well, which has made complexity of access to it much harder because you've got two TOCs running on it as opposed to just the one. So how, I guess one of my challenges for GCRE would be how can the railway be strategically designed in order to flex to suit change over time? If HS1 was originally intended as a international railway, now it's domestic and international, could, I don't know, crossovers be strategically placed so that we could keep it open because it always shuts? I think there's a ton of different areas of sort of operational assumptions that could be solved at GCRE for future railways. And how do we flex to suit, changing patterns after COVID, where perhaps Eurostar want to run trains at night time because it's cheaper for people to use after COVID, with people's patterns of usage changing? How do we flex to suit more easily? Because at the minute it takes a lot of planning. Okay, so I thought my last slide, it's only 5, so you can all go home after this, to talk about our current challenges. As part of our sort of emerging digital strategy, our biggest challenge is now understanding what the railway's doing day to day, so that we can see how it relates to our asset performance, which is very high. Very lucky to have that. We're thinking that maybe by having a facility such as GCRE, it may be able to solve some of the challenges of working out what the best technologies are in terms of kit that goes out there. We're in the middle of doing assessments to see where monitoring is useful. It's not useful everywhere. It's also hard to do that when the railway's open all the time. So it would help us to get a picture of sort of our asset deterioration and on our tracks and civil assets and that sort of thing. A big challenge, if you can capture asset deterioration, is around how you visualise it. We've got people of all different skill sets over HS1. How do you allow them to see the data so that they can interpret it to do their job? How do we compare the deterioration of one asset type against another? How do we get a sort of consistent set of rules? How do we link what our PhD students are researching for us at universities? How does that affect what we monitor? How does it affect the decisions that we make? I'm hoping that, you know, GCRE can answer some of this for us and for the wider industry too. I suppose while we're doing all of or asking all of these questions, I think it's important that, and I think Kelvin mentioned it, it's important that the integration of new kit doesn't create for us additional visits to the site to look after it. That longevity of tech and kit that goes out there will help us to fulfil our goals, so long as it lowers the amount of time that we're out there. And it I guess ensures availability for train services when we want to try and grow the business. And I suppose that raises the biggest challenge of them all. How do you get the necessary assurance from the technology we need to know that it's giving us what we want? It's one thing having it out there, but being able to learn from it is the most important part. So by having GCRE, I think we'll get an answer to a lot of our challenges, and through our R&D portfolio, I look forward to sharing with GCRE as well as learning from. Oh, I've gone back. That's me. I'm done. If you want to scan the QR code, I can chat to you afterwards. It's my digital business card. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And we are now at the end of I think you'll agree, a fantastic series of speakers. So thank you from me to all of the speakers that we had today. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us in the room and to everyone who's joining us online as well. Please do get in touch if there's anything I can do to help you with your competition application. Good luck, obviously. Very important to say at this point. But to close proceedings formally, I'm going to hand back over to Simon.
Well, thanks everybody, and thanks for that, Daisy. Well, so I just wanted to just say thank you to everybody that's spoken today. Particularly the people who've been setting the challenge for us, who we've heard from HS1 and HS2 and Network Rail and Transport for Wales. We've heard the Industry Wales perspective. We've heard from the governments in Cardiff Bay and in Westminster. Thank you to the team that's organised all of this lot today. I'm not going to mention the size of the site, but this is a really big deal. This is a really big deal for us. I'm conscious that some of you may want to have kind of one-to-one conversations with us. There's a number of us in the GCRE team will be hanging around afterwards, and the Innovate team hanging around afterwards if you want to talk to any of us. This is a really big deal. This is a UK facility that we're building in Wales. It's a great opportunity here. It's a unique facility and a unique competition, as Kelvin said. So encourage everybody who can to get involved in it. And we're looking forward to seeing those bids. Have a look at the Innovate UK website and get your bids in. So thank you very much. Have a safe trip back, everybody, and great to see you all. Thank you.
Innovate's UK KTN Innovation Exchange provides ambitious solution providers with the opportunity to collaborate with key industry stakeholders, helping these major businesses discover the most innovative solutions to solve real-world problems.
IX is a bit different to any other open innovation programme that you might see. What I love about it is if a challenge holder, as we define them, has a problem that they can't solve with their existing supply chain, we help reach parts of the supply chain that they wouldn't normally reach. I guess we have a black book that other organisations might not have at their fingertips.
First of all, it's the challenge owners, and they really like it because it allows them to get access to new ideas from different sectors of people they wouldn't normally meet. And the second party are the solution providers. And what they really struggle with is getting access, getting their foot through the door to the right people. And this takes them and introduces them to the right people with the technical skills that will assess what they're proposing.
It helps people find things they didn't know they didn't know. It's those solutions that, gosh, never even thought that would work, or I didn't know that we could sell that to those. And that's the advantage for both sides.
The main benefit of Innovation Exchange is it breaks down barriers, it breaks down silos. Innovation and commercialisation is incredibly, or perceived as incredibly difficult. The IX process facilitates the transition of technology through to commercialisation across sectors.
Large companies, small companies, everybody's busy, everybody is tied up. We try and reduce the amount of time that you need to put into to get what you require.
So with the Innovation Exchange, we've proven it to be successful primarily in the energy sector. However, net zero gives us a great opportunity to step into other sectors. In addition, we have potential growth areas with local authorities. We can create an Innovation Exchange for the investor network. So there are a great number of areas where this can grow.
The way we've designed the IX process makes it really easy for public sector organisations to implement, as it maps perfectly to the innovation partnership procurement routes.
The solutions that we've been able to extract through the process, we've reached out to, I think, some 40,000 businesses across the UK. We've really gained from the technologists in the KTN and the real subject matter experts that could really help us to distinguish from what might be good projects to what are excellent projects. We've really been able to get the cream of the crop through that to get to some really, really exciting, promising, highly innovative projects that I think without the KTN we wouldn't necessarily have been able to find.
Our technology began initially in the food industry, and then by the help of KTN we managed to move it into nuclear industry, but also now we are thinking of its use in other sectors.
And by joining basically such a program into the KTN, this helps a lot into bridging this gap and get into a better insights. What are the end users' challenges and what they're looking for? And it will help us, as you have seen, into interdisciplinary application, taking our knowledge, our expertise and applying it into other sectors.
Through relationships and also technical development, I don't think that we've experienced a better setup than the KTN IX program.
If I'd sum it up in one thing, it would be kind of this end-to-end support. So it wasn't that we had, a different point of contact for different parts of it and things got lost along the way. No, we were engaging with the same people from the start to finish. So there was this kind of consistency in what we were wanting to do, and there was some ownership of it from the KTN side, which we really valued.
We've got quite a big Innovate UK project now through our networks with the KTN because of getting involved in Innovation Exchange. So I highly recommend it.
Connecting people to make positive change, and that's what Innovation Exchange allows.